wide receiver that has found a home. Massive news in the NFL. Massive news in the NFL. No, the big news that you heard about this morning on with the Border Patrol, I'm guessing, and that is Dan Hurley and the Lakers. Is this happening? Is it going to take place? The interest between the two? And what would be an absolute seismic shift, or what it would feel like as a seismic shift in college basketball, in the NBA as well, but we'll see what the impact of the NBA will be. But around here, obviously we talk a lot of college basketball more than we talk the NBA, and with KU being one of the favorites this year, and UConn returning a number of players while also getting some pretty good players as freshmen and some transfers, and being, by all accounts, a top 5 preseason team going for a three-peat, and maybe, arguably by some, one of, if not the best. He's certainly one of, but is he the best college basketball coach that's out there? He's won back-to-back. We did our conversation of who we would hire right now to start a program. I still went Bill Self number one, and I was on an island. It wasn't a lonely island because I don't care. If you say that hiring Bill Self as the guy that's going to run your program, I don't know that I could go wrong. I don't think you can go wrong with either, but the majority consensus seemed to be Dan Hurley. It's Dan Hurley. He's surpassed Bill Self if you're talking about a program, and who knows how long Bill Self, that was part of it. Is Bill Self going to coach at Kansas for a long time? Well, oh, how the turntables have turned. Because I remember at the time a little bit of the detractors, well, I don't know how long Bill Self's going to be at Kansas. He may retire soon, and Dan Hurley's going to be a lifer. Oh, yeah, that's right. Looks like somebody that's got 2 thumbs, this guy was right.
I meant NBA program. So
did
that
we
was
even discuss NBA possibilities
we
during
didn't.
that? I don't think we did.
No, not at all. We were talking about, if he went to Kentucky or, stayed at UConn, but who would you hire if you're out there and you can have any coach?
This was after Calipari, I think, went to Arkansas.
Right? Yeah. And we're like, all right, so Kentucky's looking at it and saying they want, Dan Hurley. He's going to say no, so they're going to obviously go after Billy Donovan and make that connection, and they'll probably hire Billy Donovan. If they miss on everybody in the world, maybe they'll get Mark Pope, but that's probably not going to happen. That thing would be met with a revolt if they were to hire Mark Pope there, so that's not going to happen at all. They would probably bring back Rick Pitino before they went and got Mark Pope. But yeah, that was a conversation that we had at the time, and Dan Hurley could be the next Lakers head coach. Now, if he turns down the Lakers, then he ain't going anywhere for a long time. And then that would make total sense when everybody was saying that, Dan Hurley is going to be there for a long time, so that's why you would start your program with him. You feel like you got maybe another 20 years with him coaching. You don't have 20 years with Bill Self coaching at Kansas or in college basketball. But my first reaction to this is, and we'll hear from Woj, we'll hear from Brian Windhorst, we'll hear from incredibly timed well Dan Patrick having Gino Auriemma on the show to talk about the WNBA and women's basketball. And this happens to break this morning while he's going to talk with Gino Auriemma. We'll hear from Gino Auriemma and on the Dan Patrick show. We'll hear from all of them. But my first reaction is, if Woj is breaking this news and it's being discussed like this, I feel like it's a number of steps down the road. This is not an initial they're reaching out and seeing the interest level of Dan Hurley. This is they are negotiating what the deal is going to be to make it an offer he can't refuse for Dan Hurley to be the next Lakers head coach. There's too much smoke here with many people talking about it and it getting to this point to where they are making an aggressive run, a large, significant contract for Dan Hurley to be the guy to take him into the next generation of Lakers basketball post-LeBron. I mean, my first instinct is, when is this going to be announced? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Now, they do have sort of an embargo at times where they don't, like the J.J. Redick thing. Didn't we hear like J.J. Redick could be the next head coach, but they wouldn't announce anything until the finals were over because the NBA doesn't. I mean, how about you put more of a spotlight on the NBA? You're talking about this and the Lakers and Dan Hurley, and hey, by the way, there's a NBA Finals Game 1 coming up, NBA Finals Game 2 on Sunday, whenever. You know, the whole keeping it these announcements until the NBA Finals is over is just dumb. But my thought, Jack, is how soon is this announced that he's the next Lakers coach? Because I feel it's pretty close to being a done deal if we're this far down the road with the conversation of what the Lakers are doing.
Well, I think when you see that it's Woj is the one that tweets this out, this isn't just some rumor or this isn't just some, they reached out to Dan Hurley to gauge his interest. They have zeroed in on him being the head coach, and kind of the way we saw it all the way back with John Calipari. Whenever you hear the term zeroed in or they've basically picked him as the guy, they're negotiating at that point. Yep. So that shows immediately that Dan Hurley has interest in this job. And, I mean, you think about it, this is the Los Angeles Lakers. This is one of the more prominent brands in all of the world, and you'll be able to coach LeBron James in the final years of his career. I mean, coach is probably too strong of a word. I mean, LeBron can do whatever he wants. He's one of the coaches.
He gets to bring on Bronny. He gets to develop Bronny.
Figure out a trade to get to Bronny.
Yeah, well, they got the 55th pick. They can take Bronny.
That's true.
They'll develop Bronny. You kidding me? Come on, man. Take Bronny.
And he's to get up in the top 10.
He's the next James. So you transition from LeBron to Bronny, and you still have a James that's there. And Dan Hurley. Look, Dan Hurley tried to get Bronny out of high school, and he chose USC. He finally gets a chance to coach Bronny.
He can do it again.
He can do it. Yeah.
And he'll have the best sales pitch.
And Bronny will not be able to say no if they select him at 55. He doesn't get a choice.
No.
You are coming to this program. Sorry, dude. This is a huge opportunity for Dan Hurley to finally get to coach Bronny.
And I'm kind of shocked back then when we talked about building a program and going over Dan Hurley and Bill Self, how we didn't think that maybe NBA could be a possibility, because a job like this, some people out there are going to say, oh, well, the NBA isn't as watchable anymore. This is still Dan Hurley, who's won back-to-back titles. He could return to UConn, go for a third, but now he can put himself in the category of if you go to the Lakers, it's not like you're going to take over the Charlotte Hornets. I'm sorry to any Hornets fans that are listening. He's going to take over.
They're pissed right now. You just lost. Every Hornet fan in the area is now turning the channel. Sorry.
I'm sorry to those out there, but this is a job that he can take over with one of the best players in the game still and have a chance to rebuild with a lot of these young players. And there's a big reason why this was far more enticing than maybe even the Kentucky job in college. He's going, I still have one of the best teams. I can run it back. I'm never going to be run out of town. You go to the NBA, it's a whole different story. And I don't know why. It always kind of seemed like he could be an NBA guy. Kind of the same way Billy Donovan back then. We talked about Billy Donovan. I mean, taking Florida back-to-back. They were kind of like UConn, that dominant force. And then a few years down the road, he heads off to the NBA. So when it could be announced, man, it's kind of like when Schefter does this in the NFL or Ian Rappaport. When it's that prominent of a tweet, it kind of only feels like a matter of time.
We were an hour away. Looking back, we were an hour away of the deal being official when we first got word that the Chiefs had allowed Tyreek Hill to seek a trade. Mm-hmm. An hour later, the Chiefs were trading him to the Miami Dolphins. That had been in the works for a while. And now we know. We hear all the different reporting and everything. Brett Veach has talked about it. Tyreek Hill's talked about it, sort of the timing of the whole thing. Tyreek's agent, Rosenhaus, he's talked about it, the timing of the whole thing. Like, we know, like, it was a week to 10 days that they had been discussing these different things about him being traded. And then the news comes out that Tyreek Hill has been given the opening to seek a trade. He's been granted permission by the Chiefs. And you're like, oh my God, they're seeking it. An hour later, Tyreek Hill has been traded to the Miami Dolphins. I don't know that it's going to be within an hour, but I feel like if there wasn't some seriousness from Dan Hurley's side, then it wouldn't be discussed like it is from Brian Windhorst and Adrian Wojnarowski, a Woj bomb. It wouldn't be these things taking place, because let's play clip number 4 here. This was Kentucky and Calipari had already parted ways. Cal was a Razorback. He was calling the Hogs there in Fayetteville, and Dan Hurley was asked about any, air quotes, job openings that might be out there for him.
conversations with anybody else that might have a job coming open tomorrow? Yeah. I don't think that's a concern. My wife, you should have her answer that. Yeah.
We can maybe arrange a press conference for Mrs. Hurley in the morning. Congratulations, Coach.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she'll answer that question better than I can. Yeah.
He dismissed most any college rumors outright, like dead on arrival. Okay, yeah, that's not a consideration. Yeah, I've moved around enough. My wife would kill me if we go somewhere else right now. They're both East Coast people. They met at Seton Hall. He's been in Jersey and Rhode Island and Connecticut and New York his whole life, whether it's high school or assistant or at Rutgers or at UConn or at Rhode Island, at Seton Hall. Like, he's been in the East Coast, the Northeast, his entire life. This is a complete and totally different culture that he'll be moving to L.A. It's why the Lakers would have to make it more than worth it for him to do that. And his wife to be like, okay, this is all we've done. We've lived on the East Coast, and we're good, and we're comfortable. And you're making $5-6 million a year to live in stores, which could be like $50 million in another place. I don't know. You're making $5 million a year, and now you're heading to L.A. where it's, cost of living is going to be a lot more. But how much is this something that Dan Hurley wanted to chase? How big of a dream is the NBA to Dan Hurley as opposed to college? Because what we've heard for a long time, and this was talked about around Bill Self too, that if you talk to almost any big-time college basketball coach, they'll tell you in a candid moment that their dream is to coach in the NBA, is to then make that next step. I think Bill Self, I had said for a long time, before Bill Self hangs up the whistle, he'll be an NBA head coach. I don't know that that's going to happen anymore because of, where he's at in his life and where he's at KU, and maybe just really comfortable and driven, since the heart issue. But I thought, Oklahoma City opens up, boom. There's Bill Self. He's going to be the Thunder head coach before he's done. He's moving back to Oklahoma. He can be in the NBA. We've seen Patino try it, Calipari try it, Billy Donovan, you mentioned that. He's been in a couple of different spots. And the difference that this is to me, as opposed to when Tom Izzo turned down the Cavs, the difference to me is the Tom Izzo turning down the Cavs was, how could you turn down a chance to coach LeBron? Like Izzo talked about always wanting to coach LeBron, and now you get a chance to coach LeBron. Right, but you're coaching LeBron as the Cavs coach. This is the Lakers. It's not only if you, I really want to coach LeBron, which may be a factor that drives you away from a particular team, organization, city, franchise. The Lakers are the draw, and you can make a case that LeBron would be the detriment for a couple years as he's there, and then you're transitioning the Lakers post-LeBron, and you're still the Lakers coach. Where Cleveland and the Cavs, Tom Izzo was, come coach LeBron James in Cleveland for the Cavs. Come be LeBron's head coach for as long as LeBron is there. And if LeBron leaves, you're still the Cavs head coach. LeBron leaves, you're still the Lakers head coach in the NBA.
And look at Spo down in Miami. You're
right.
Still the Miami Heat head coach.
The second longest tenured coach in the NBA is Spoelstra, right? It's only Pop. He was there, well before Steve Kerr in Miami, before Kerr got to Golden State. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, because Mark Jackson was there in Golden State at that time. I think even after Spoelstra. So, yeah, Spoelstra, second longest tenured coach in the NBA. He's been there a while. But that was, coaching, LeBron and the big three, and Spoelstra stepping up and doing that. And he's been a fantastic coach since then. And he stayed around, and they've kept him through different iterations of the Dwayne Wade to Jimmy Butler, etc. Popovich has obviously been there forever. I mean, I think I was 5 when Popovich took over the Spurs. No, I was you weren't even born. When were you born, Jack?
99.
Yeah, he was there before you. He was winning an NBA championship when you were born at the Spurs. So, yes. And then Kerr, and then I have no idea. Malone? Is Michael Malone?
Malone probably comes close to that.
I would guess Malone would be after Kerr because he's been He's been there, what, 10 years?
Well, Carlisle was in Dallas, but then went to Indiana.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, current coaches at their spots, because that's the one thing. Like, Dan Hurley has a lifetime contract at UConn.
Mm-hmm.
He ain't going anywhere. The NBA, they churn out coaches a lot. You're the NBA coach of the year. 2 years later, you're fired.
Look at Doc Rivers. Like,
Yeah.
he's had multiple teams.
Right,
and he's considered a really good coach.
And if Dan Hurley's wife was going to kill him if he took a Kentucky job in basketball to get a lifetime contract after being at Rutgers and Seton Hall and Rhode Island and then UConn, and boy, she's really going to kill me if we move to Kentucky for the next 15 years, whereas now we're at UConn. What's going to happen if you coach the Lakers for 5 years or 4 years, you get fired? You can go back to college, but is something in the Northeast going to open up? Like, are you moving back to the Northeast, or you taking over Kansas for, Bill Self retiring? You taking over Missouri after Dennis Gates wins 3 straight championships, right? Anybody? Nobody? Why'd you laugh, Jack? I don't understand that.
I don't know. Maybe just not on the same level.
Okay,
but I love the optimism.
Thank you very much. NIT. What are you talking about?
There you go.
Yeah. Now we're on board, Jack. Now we're on board.
Only up from here. So.
Oh my God! Now you've lost the Hornets and Dennis Gates fans.
Rough morning.
That combination, Dennis Gates Hornets fans are out. He could always move back to college. He can always say, Rick Pitino at Kentucky, went to Boston, failed. Any job. Take any job. Michigan, UNLV, Louisville. Well, he coached at Kentucky. He ain't taking Louisville. Louisville paid him the most money. He took the Louisville job. John Calipari, UMass, Nets, whatever, return, take a job. Memphis, got a job there, right? Billy Donovan, Kentucky wanted him. He hadn't been in college since the early 2007, 8. We went through the coaches. Well, no, he was like 11 or 12, right? I think we went through the coaches in the SEC the last year Billy Donovan was there, and my goodness, it was a who's who of who that were coaches in the SEC. It's different now, but Billy Donovan would be able to name your price. Brad Stevens, if he returned to college right now, and he's obviously in a different role now with the Celtics, not a head coach, but Brad Stevens, if he were to return to college, it would be a name your price. Same thing with Dan Hurley. He can always go back to college. Would you be able to go back to UConn? Is a different story if they already had a head coach. But you do have something. You have a really nice fallback plan if you're Hurley, while having potentially life-changing money. $5 million a year is life-changing money from what he was making at Rhode Island to what he's making now. Lakers might pay him 20.
I don't think you can turn down money like that. I'll be quite honest with you. I know that he brought up his wife in this situation, and probably the discussion was, hey, why would you go, I don't want to say laterally, but UConn is at the top of the food chain
UConn to
right
Kentucky
now.
right now is a lateral move. It's just you're moving to a spot you're not familiar with. Historically, program-wise, yes, Kentucky is as good as it gets. It's one of the premier ones. UConn's not there yet, but over the last 20 years, they're a blue blood. UConn to me is a blue blood. So you're going from blue blood to blue blood in a place you're not familiar with, making more money, but you're not going from $5 million to 20 potentially, as opposed to $5 million, we'll give you 9. We'll give you 10. Okay, you're doubling your money. Yeah, they're going to give him 400% of what he's making.
The interesting part about this all, and I'm glad you brought it up with it's not really a leap of faith or too much of a jump of going to the NBA, because if he fails, if he goes to LA and it doesn't work after 2 years, there are going to be college teams lining up to bring him back.
Yep.
He will never take another job that is sub $5 million probably.
Yep.
So he can go make a ton of money with the Lakers. And let's be honest, as long as LeBron's there, they're not going to be a bottom 5 team in the league. So he's likely not getting run out if he takes this job in 2 years or so. But there's no shame, really, to me, in failing in the NBA. If you fail, go, okay, you're just an excellent college coach, and maybe you couldn't, ring in all the professional athletes, because that's the difference now. You're coaching, not every team, but a lot of grown men. You're not coaching 18 to 23-year-olds where maybe you can kind of have this. It's kind of like with Nick Saban. Like, Nick Saban didn't work out in the NFL because you're dealing with grown men that were getting big-time money. You go to college, they might have a different level of respect for you. And for Dan Hurley, maybe he values that. Maybe he doesn't want to have to deal with guys that are in their 30s and only care about the money. But also in college sports, there are kids now that just care about the money.
And in the NBA, you don't have to recruit. You don't have to be out there doing all of the constant recruiting. It's never ending. You won a national championship, and the next day you're out recruiting, trying to transfers and everything.
Your own players and others too, because they can leave.
Because the transfer window opens during the NCAA tournament. Or it opened the day after the selection show because people were turning down NIT bids because they wanted to go and recruit. That's when the transfer window opens. It's never ending, never stopping, consistent every day where there's an off season in the NBA. And you have a little extra time to do that. And I heard the LA weather is nice compared to Connecticut and the Northeast. I don't know. I've heard it's nicer. I don't know. Somebody said it never rains there.
Maybe just a little bit off and on when you think about it, but it's certainly better than Connecticut weather.
Certainly. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling more zone next. All right, so the show's going to change a little bit because coming up at 1 o'clock, we were going to hear from the Kansas City Chiefs in press conferences with Andy Reid, Carson Wentz, Justin Reid, Trey Smith, and George Karlaftis. But that is not going to be the case as practice today has been canceled by the Kansas City Chiefs. It will resume tomorrow, and they'll have press conferences and everything. And it is being canceled / postponed because of a medical emergency that has taken place with one of the players for the Kansas City Chiefs. They the player is in stable condition from different reports. That whatever took place, whoever the player was, the only thing, and I promise you, I don't know a name or anything as far as who specifically it is. The only thing we have been told is that it's not a prominent player. It's a role player, a backup player. That's it. No idea. Doesn't make it less serious for what's going on, but the medical emergency that took place that canceled practice today for the Chiefs, taken to the hospital, stable condition, seems to be doing okay, as opposed to maybe what was taking place to when they canceled the practice. Last time I remember something like this happening at a practice where it just ended up getting canceled was when Teddy Bridgewater destroyed his knee in practice, and the reports were coming out that, and this is different, this is a medical emergency with the person in stable condition, but you knew that was serious when the Vikings said they have canceled practice because somebody goes down, they move the practice 40 yards down the field. And they keep going, and the trainers work on the player that's injured, even if it's a torn ACL or something like that. That was such a devastating knee injury and apparently as grotesque that they couldn't continue practice. The ambulance had to come there. They were talking about whether his leg would have to be amputated, like it was that bad for Teddy Bridgewater. And you knew it was bad when they said, practice is canceled. Okay, this is a big deal then. And you knew it was Teddy Bridgewater right away. They said, practice canceled. Teddy Bridgewater suffered a significant knee injury at practice, was taken by ambulance to a hospital. And you're like, all right, this is a big deal. This is a big deal. This doesn't seem to be a football-related injury. This is a medical emergency event that took place at practice or around the facility, and therefore the OTA practice has been postponed for today. This was going to be the open media day as well, and then we would hear from the Chiefs, but apparently that is going to take place tomorrow. We'll find out who the player is eventually. We'll find out what the medical emergency is eventually. But right now, certainly we're thinking of whoever is involved, and scary enough and severe enough to just simply cancel practice today. Maybe it'd be different if it was training camp. Maybe they move it to a later this afternoon or something like that, and still have a practice as opposed to canceling it, but you don't have anything tomorrow, and it's an OTA's practice. It's still voluntary as well, so still scary with what's going on to hear that. No idea who the player is, though. But no practice today. Nothing from the Chiefs today. And we'll update when we get any information as to what's taken place. We'll find out, what took place. But yeah, scary situation with the Chiefs and a particular player with, again, a medical emergency. That's it's scary. We've been told a backup player, role player, not a prominent player. That was one of the words that was used as well, which, Chiefs are a pretty damn good team, so they've got a number of those players. Not to mention 5 minutes ago, Patrick Mahomes just tweeted, because that's where a lot of people's minds go. Patrick Mahomes just tweeted about the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm going to guess that it's not as scary or significant, and I'm making sure this wasn't a retweet by somebody that popped up in my timeline, because the Dallas Mavericks released a video getting ready for the NBA Finals. And if there's anybody's voice that you want to put to a video, obviously it's Patrick Mahomes. And
guess who did Boston's?
Kelsey?
Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. So a little clash of the goats again.
Yeah, 12 minutes ago, Patrick Mahomes tweeted, "Let's get it," with the video that the Dallas Mavericks.
Good detective work right there.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So there you go. Team doctors and athletic trainers responded immediately to the backup player for the medical emergency. That coming from Nate Taylor. The Chiefs postponed their OTA practice that was set to be open to reporters because of a medical emergency. I'm told a backup player was taken by ambulance to an area hospital. He's in stable condition. Team doctors and athletic trainers responded immediately to the backup player, per source. So there we go. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back and continue rolling more Zone right after this. That gives them Hollywood, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. 7 receivers. Now, they kept 7 last year, but that was such an anomaly of them keeping that many receivers. They typically keep 5. If they keep 6, it's only because they're keeping 3 tight ends. Well, they've got Kelsey, they've got Gray, they've got Irv Smith, and they drafted Jared Wiley. They would have liked to keep 4 tight ends last year, but Jody Fortson got injured, and they didn't keep Bushman when Jody Fortson went down. So they started the year with Kelsey, Gray, and Blake Bell, but it would have been Kelsey, Gray, Bell, and Fortson. So that would have been 1 less receiver, probably Justin Ross not making the team to start the season. I think they'll keep 4 tight ends this year, which means probably 5 receivers. Rice may be suspended, so now you go to 6 because Rice won't count if he's suspended. So then you would keep 6 total, but 5 that would start the season. You're still 1 less than the 7 I just named, and Ross isn't in that group either, and neither is Nico Remigio that people are talking about, an opportunity to make the squad this year. Like, it ain't exactly like they are, one of the greatest receiving cores, that we've ever seen, but they have some better, more legitimate top-end receivers than they had last year, where it was trying to be the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That's what they were trying to be last year. They weren't even that, because that wide receiver core, the whole greater than sum of its parts, it wasn't. But even if you took the sum of its parts and chopped it out, you still weren't going to get much in return. So it was just rough. This one, at least you've got Hollywood, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. But Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and McCole Hardman. You're looking at 2, maybe 3 of those guys making the squad, depending on Rashee Rice's status. If he's suspended, then you can have 3 of those 4. If he's not suspended, then you can have 2. Because, again, I think they're keeping 5.
That kind of feels like the locks would be, obviously, if Rashee Rice is not suspended, so the locks are going to be Hollywood, Rice, Worthy. I believe Hardman. I mean, if you sign a 1-year deal, Hardman has to be a lock.
I think Justin Watson's a lock because they love him in special teams so much.
So it's Sky Moore, or even if Rashee Rice is suspended,
talking about
Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney's the odd man out.
I mean, I would love to see the contract. I would guess that McColl's contract doesn't mean that he would not be cuttable. It could be, hey, you're on the team, you know the offense, you can compete for a job. And he might have just taken that opportunity because maybe nobody else was wanting him on their squad because they saw this is what he did with the Jets outside of Kansas City. Even with the Chiefs, he wasn't exactly stellar. He did catch the touchdown. That was a little bit like Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney's touchdown against the Eagles. That was more schemed than receiver making an amazing play, route, whatever. But there was not a market for McCole Hardman. And the Chiefs brought him back. I would guess that McCole Hardman is not a definite player that makes the squad. It could also be, you bring a number of guys in because injuries can happen. Justin Watson goes down, okay, those guys slide up 1. McCole goes down, those guys slide up 1, or whatever. Or it's McCole, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore. You guys figure it out. And I'll take Sky Moore out of that group. Because McCole Hardman, I've got Xavier Worthy and Hollywood. I've got McCole in 2 different players that are better than him. They are what McCole does, but better at that. And I think he is a depth piece, maybe an injury piece that's there. And come cut down time, his name might be, on the blocks. He might even be an early cut that they go, yeah, we're going to let you go right now and let you go find a job somewhere. So we don't cut you late and now you're scrambling. We'll cut you early because you're not going to make the squad. Who knows what's going to take place, but interesting move, them re-signing him. I know there were a number of people that said, I'd rather you re-sign McCole Hardman than go and get Zay Jones or Tyler Boyd or whatever. There was that opinion out there. I was not of that mindset because, I've seen McColl, and they've got Xavier and Hollywood.
The Chiefs seem to do this. I mean, I think we had a conversation about this like a month or two ago. Like, it would make far more sense for them to re-sign MVS or McColl Hardman than go out there and get somebody who doesn't know the playbook. It might have been an internal discussion, too, where they said, Patrick, who do you want? Who do you want to teach some of these guys the offense? I mean, we're talking about a number 4, number 5 wide receiver. How often are they on the field? How many times are they getting targeted in this game or in a single game? But I also wonder, I mean, now you have 5 guys that do the same thing. Hollywood, of course, he's the number 1 in this offense. But then Xavier Worthy, he's going to be that, speed receiver that can be helpful on special teams. Hardman kind of does the same thing. Tony kind of does the same thing. Sky Moore kind of does the same thing. So you can't, preferably, I don't think you want to carry 4 of those guys.
No.
I think you have to weed out one of them. And maybe it comes down to potential and ceiling. We heard Brett Veach say it last month that they still believe Kadarius Toney can be a good receiver for this team. Do they believe the same in Sky Moore? I mean, maybe you come down to who's a bigger headache. Kadarius Toney had his issues last year.
I'll take
Sky Moore. Sky Moore didn't, but also the production on the field from both those guys is kind of non-existent.
Kadarius Toney was a much more impactful wide receiver this year than Sky Moore was. It was just a negative. He was way more impactful than Sky Moore was because he was he was a problem.
Contributing the other way.
Exactly. He was the most impactful. Amon-Ra St. Brown and Kadarius Toney were the biggest, most impactful wide receivers in week 1 against the Lions. Both of them in favor of the Lions. Both of them
great secondary member of the Lions. All the batted passes up in the air that led to turnovers.
Hey, Branch, I know you had to sit and hang out one more night here in Kansas City than you thought on draft night. I'm going to pay you back. I got you, buddy. Here you go. Here's a pick 6 for you. And then, you know what, this last drive, I'm going to go and drop the ball. Just go ahead and drop the ball. Let's see if we can really, I mean, I don't understand the love from the Chiefs to Kadarius Toney. I just don't. And we hear, boy, he's electric with the ball in his hands. Let me look at the numbers. No, he's not. He's not. I like to see it then. If he's electric with the ball in his hands, then there should be some electricity from time to time. He's got very sharp and fast cuts. Cool. But motion is not just simply movement forward. I'm moving if I'm in the water. It could be just treading water. I'm not swimming, Don't mistake motion for activity. And or progress. And he cuts really fast and goes this, right? And you're trying to hand him the ball and just give the ball to a damn running back. Like, he's not Deebo Samuel. And Sky Moore, to me, he's the Chiefs don't think he's as, quote, dynamic as Kadarius Toney. But the Sky Moore drop that we think of in week 1 was one where the defender got his hand in and punched it out. And you'd like to see a wide receiver be stronger with that. But he's not just dropping passes that are right to him like Kadarius Toney is. So of that group of McColl and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, I'll take my chances with Sky Moore and move on. I don't need to see any more Kadarius Toney. Don't need to see anything more from him. I don't think it's all about health because his hands weren't injured. I mean, it's like, you're Brett Veach. It's like, well, it's a matter of health with Kadarius Toney. Well, it's a matter of catching the football for Kadarius Toney. It's a matter of not going on IG, when your team's getting ready to play in a huge postseason game and talking about, I'm not injured. And then come out later going, well, no, I was talking to Giants fans about that. Now, you didn't say I was not injured. You said I'm not injured. That's present tense. You've already told everybody when they traded for you that you were not injured with the Giants. You've already said that. That's established. It's in the past. We know that. This is now you saying, I'm not injured. Just making it up. Okay, well, I don't need you around then, man. I don't need you. You're a headache on the field and off the field. No, thank you. I'll take my chances with Rashee Rice.
And why does it matter what Giants fans are saying a year after you've already been acquired? Why does it matter?
And your team's getting ready to play a huge game, this Sunday morning.
If he had time.
Might have been pretty Ricky that he was responding to. He wasn't famous at the time, and maybe he had a tweet that went out that was pretty big.
Pretty Ricky's getting some things right.
He does.
He gets a lot of things right, man. He misses on some things, but he had was it the night before tweet? I didn't see it, but I saw it after the fact. Justin Jefferson, that it's going to be a massive Justin Jefferson contract that's going to be announced very soon, over $100 million guaranteed.
Good
and
for
then
him.
we heard Justin
for him.
like, wow, pretty Ricky, man. Knew nothing about him. Now I know him. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We'll talk with Kent Swanson coming up next.
The Zone is presented by Guaranteed Foods, delivering all natural food to Midwestern families since 1958. Enjoy healthier food, more free time, free delivery, and better value. Go to GuaranteedFoods.com.
We on? Okay, very good. My headphone wasn't working for some reason. We continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Dylan Michaels heading up until 2 o'clock. Let's talk some NFL football, some Chiefs football. Kent Swanson, KC Sports Network, kcsn.substack.com, and the KC Laboratory podcast. Kent, welcome to the show. There's an update for the Chiefs canceling their activities today, their practice today, the team activities going on, and postponing them until tomorrow. Tom Pelissero reporting just a few minutes ago that a backup defensive lineman had a seizure in a special teams meeting and went into cardiac arrest. The team's medical staff worked quickly. An ambulance was called, and the player is currently in stable condition. So that is what turns out to be, seems like right now, good news that something terrible did not happen, but understandably why the Chiefs would cancel all the team activities today. And, we were talking, Kent, on the air. It's like, well, the practice doesn't even start till 11:20, so this had to take place at the facilities of some sort. Was it in the weight room? Was it in a meeting? And now we know that it was a seizure that took place in a special teams meeting with a backup defensive lineman, and he went into cardiac arrest. But it looks like everything's fine now. So.
Yeah, it's still, obviously a scary moment. Prayers up to a young man that is, we don't know who it is. We may never find out. But prayers up to him for sure. Just an awful way for everything to go, today. But glad that he's doing well for sure. So definitely happy about that. That's great news.
Absolutely. Kent Swanson is our guest. You know what? Let's start there then. We were discussing special teams, at least for defensive linemen, part of special teams in a special teams meeting. Let's start there. There were a number of different ways that I wanted to talk with you and discuss the Chiefs here, but let's start with special teams and how you view what this team will look like. If they will be more of the aggressive teams that will be, kicking it off every time to land between the 20 and the goal line, will they take the strategy from time to time of just simply kicking it through the end zone so that they will just give the ball to the 30-yard line to whatever team it might be? If you're trying to throw a dart right now, where would you think the Chiefs would rank on aggressive or middle of the pack or less aggressive teams when it comes to trying to figure this new kickoff and kickoff return rule out?
I tend to think, though, it'll probably be in the middle there. I think they'll be a little bit more on the aggressive side, right? But I don't think they're going to be the most aggressive team in football. Obviously, they do have some built-in advantages with how they can manage things potentially with a Louis Reese and Justin Reed potentially kicking and allowing them to, have some advantages when it comes to personnel and their involvement, trying to make tackles. But I think when we've had these conversations, over the course, I've had a lot of these conversations about the kickoff rules. And I think we almost put ourselves into this all or nothing kind of mentality where it's like, well, Justin Reed's the kickoff guy. I think Butker will be the kickoff guy, and Reed. You could see both of them kind of mix, and the Chiefs just picking their spots. I do think they could, be a little bit more aggressive than other teams, though, because they do have that built-in advantage with Justin Reed. But I also don't know if they're going to go too crazy with it just because, they have the built-in advantage of Patrick Mahomes, and you don't want to get too far away from that.
Yeah, the person kicking off, I thought that was one of the more fascinating things we heard from Dave Tobe last week was, Butker's not going to be the guy because hang time's a detriment this year. You kick it high. Who cares? It just allows the team to get their blocks set up. No, you want to kick a line drive and have it land and have them run around and try to pick it up while you're working around the blockers. So, there really is no need for, honestly, there's no need to have Harrison Butker on the field in kickoffs if hang time and, length do not matter. It's a matter of can you kick the ball and land it between the 20 and the goal line. You figure that out. You're the guy kicking the ball off and then go and tackle. No need to have Butker out there.
Yeah, unless you want to try it, unless he's just really good at kicking like a line drive that lands in that range, and maybe they do maybe he has some skill sets that haven't really kind of been able to be revealed yet because of the situational football, but maybe they like, how the ball flies into that range. If they can kind of kick a dead ball that, falls short but lands, inside, maybe there are some still kind of more trick kicks, almost skill kicks that you can kind of unleash with that with that approach too. Like, we'll see. Like, I'm not ruling him out entirely on it, but I think there's going to be, I think they'll use both in different scenarios.
Visiting with Kent Swanson, kcsn.substack.com, the KC Laboratory Podcast. How do you return kicks? Who's the guy that's there returning the kicks? Is it a running back? Is it Reese Zamet? Is the guy returning kicks on the Chiefs roster right now? Do they find somebody else? Because Dave Toub said it's going to be more of a running back type body, type than a wide receiver or anything like that.
Well, and I think they have some interesting running back, body types that could really fit well with that. Deneric Prince is the one that stands out the most to me as a guy that, I think from a body type running style perspective, I think he would be a really interesting guy to get involved in that. Even, a Carson Steele, I know he, didn't have the top end speed, but, there's not a lot of buffer between that, initial front line. So if you can, break through that and run away, you're going to be able to get some big gains there. But yeah, I like the idea of, introducing denser running backs into this conversation, just because, if you can create, balance through contact at that first line, man, there's a lot of yards to be gained there. So I do like the idea of it being more of a running back body type thing than maybe like, the Xavier Worthy.
I like the idea of the person's going to have to block too, because whichever side the ball is kicked to, the other one needs to go and be a lead blocker. So if you don't have the ability to block, which I do wonder how much that limits Reese Zamet, if he's not a good blocker, it's taken him a while to sort of figure some of those things out, or how can Dave Toub maybe work around that? Because if he struggles at blocking and he, might be a better returner or just that body build and that rugby background, well, then I'm not kicking it to him. I'm kicking it to somebody else and making him be a blocker and not necessarily a returner. But if he can figure that part of it out, if he can figure the, laying a block and being, physical at the point of contact, then I think he would be a perfect player to put back there.
Yeah, he definitely would, and like we talked about, like they're trying to get him involved, potentially kicking off the football a little bit too. And honestly, is Louis Reese Amos gonna make this roster? It's got to be with the special teams aspect in mind. It's got to be as a returner in this new style of play, but maybe even as a kicker, right? He's as a kickoff guy that can tackle a little bit. Like, that's the role, and that's the path to him making this roster. I know it's a fun story. I know it's an interesting story, but I mean, he's got a long ways to go. He's got a long ways to go. I know people were hyped about some of the things that they saw with these highlight reels. When I watched those highlight reels, I saw a guy that struggled to make jump cuts, to really change direction, a very linear player. The route running is not something that, is to be desired or even up to NFL standards. So it's got to be the special teams aspect. And then that's the aspect that probably more closely resembles some of the stuff he was having to do when it came to rugby anyway. So I think if he's going to find a way on this roster year one, it's got to be a utility nice special teams player.
Visiting with Kent Swanson, kcsn.substack.com, the KC Laboratory Podcast. Okay, so they re-signed Mecole Hardman. That comes out this morning that Mecole Hardman is returning to the Kansas City Chiefs. What's your take and view on Mecole Hardman signing a one-year deal with the Chiefs?
Well, there's nothing in it that is making me worry about the status of the wide receiver room at this juncture. Just because, maybe they aren't up to snuff, but I look at it as a guy that played for this team down the home stretch last season, still available in June. That's kind of what I look at it. It doesn't seem like he really had a ton of great options for this year, and it looks like he's back in Kansas City. I'd be stunned if there was any kind of real financial incentive here for him in the form of guarantees. I anticipate it's more of one of those veteran minimum type contracts that aren't really guaranteed. So it's good to have another guy that has the vertical stretchability. It's a guy that is familiar with this offense. I'm not looking too hard into it. I think it makes sense to add another guy onto the roster that has some familiarity here. It's good to keep inventory of players that that know what you're doing and have had some success here in Kansas City.
How many wide receivers do you think they keep when they get ready for the Ravens? They open the season with their roster. How many wide receivers are on this team? Is it 5? Is it 6? I would highly doubt it would be 7. They do have 4 tight ends that they seem to like. One drafted and the other one signed in Irv Smith to go along with Kelsey and Gray. So if you're guessing right now, what's the number of wide receivers they keep out of camp?
Yeah, I think it's 6, and obviously the situation with Rashee Rice could play into that factor too. You keep on the roster at the initial, at onset, and then you kind of go from there. But yeah, I think it's probably 6. There's some locks there: Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, Justin Watson, Rashee Rice. I think are your locks, and then from there, that's where the conversation gets a lot more interesting. McCole Hardman, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Nico Remigio, all kind of fighting for opportunity. And I think what's going to be interesting there for me, I think, is, McCole, Sky, Kadarius Toney. Do they have to play special teams to be able to make this roster?
You would think.
Does this team, you would think that, and maybe not just the return game, maybe it's, is Kadarius Toney have to be a gunner if he wants to make this roster? Like, that's the question I'm kind of curious about. And, when you talk about some of those guys, even Justin Ross, like if we want to talk about Justin Ross's involvement, all those guys, they might have to play special teams in some capacity. So, how far they fall, but that's going to kind of determine how many they keep on the roster, I think.
Wasn't that, I felt like that was part of the conversation last year when we were discussing, Justin Ross, and it was, well, if they keep Justin Ross, like that guy's not, necessarily a special teamer. So you're keeping that guy to be a wide receiver, and typically that, 5th or 6th, or in last year's case 7th, but certainly 5th or 6th wide receiver on your team is going to be a wide receiver. And they don't have McKinnon anymore, who was a, special teamer. Justin Watson, I think, is a lock on the team because of the special teams aspect of it. But to me, like there's almost a little bit of an inside track for, inside track is a lack of a better term. There's more of a path for Remigio to make the team if he's a guy that's already been a special teamer. And now, well, this is the spot we need to have as a special teamer as the 6th wide receiver. And also, it ain't exactly like we're losing much from Nico to keep him as opposed to Toney or McCole Hardman or Sky Moore as opposed to Nico Remigio. Like, that's going to be an interesting one as to who's the most likely to be able to play special teams. And I don't know, Kadarius Toney, they keep talking about health with him. We'll put him on special teams and see how much healthier he gets. That wouldn't seem to make sense. So if we're saying there's 4 guys that are on this team, that would mean McCole and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore would be 3 guys battling for, at most, 2 spots?
Yeah, I think that's right. And, and like you talking about the 7th wide receiver last year, I mean, I think Justin Ross essentially was the 7th wide receiver, and they're just trying to keep that inventory and keep him in, making some exceptions to their roster construction to keep him around, because he wasn't a special teams contributor. They just decided to keep 7 because they really like the player. And, I don't know if that leash is going to exist this year if he doesn't show out, in training camp. So, yeah, I think with Nico Remigio, that's a guy that if he, he might have a inside track to, the competition there with some of those guys, because he's probably the most apt to be a special teams contributor. I could see Sky Moore maybe fitting in that role too. I know it'd be a sad story arc to see him kind of having to do that, but I think that's where we stand at this point. This is a big year for Sky Moore, not only in his career in Kansas City, but his career in general. And he's probably got to do everything he can to stick with this team. I would imagine if he's able to contribute as a core special teams player, and I think he has the build to be in, the kind of mentality, the physicality that we saw at, Western Michigan. I think he has the kind of mentality and ability to do it if he has to, involve that in his game if he wants to stick around.
So the Chiefs don't have this luxury that I'm going to give you this scenario. So they don't have the luxury of just simply looking at wide receiver and not taking into account other aspects of a player's game if they can play special teams or not. But we mentioned Hollywood, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, those 4. If those 4, we would say, are a part of it, and they're going to keep 6, assuming that, let's just say Rice isn't suspended for the first couple weeks of the season, whatever. So those 4.
Sure.
McCole, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, and Nico, Who are the two you're keeping if it's just strictly based on wide receiver and special teams is not a factor in this at all? It's just your wide receiver room. These are the two out of those four that you would have on your team.
Ooh, that's a great question. So I'd probably keep Kadarius Toney around for the talent. You know, if we're just talking purely at the wide receiver spot, like I still think, you know, they're not ready to give up on him. I know they're talking a lot about keeping him healthy, but they also acknowledge that just the ceiling and talent that he has. And I'd probably go with Nicole, I guess. You know, I'm not thrilled about any of them.
Yeah.
There's just so many, unproven. And I want to say Nico Remigio, and I think he did some good things last year, but he's just too much of an unknown right now. We just don't have a good pulse on what Nico Remigio is going to be coming off the injuries last year, having to kind of take that redshirt season. Give me a week or two of training camp, and I might tell you differently, because I do believe that Nico Remigio could be someone that becomes, a serious part of the conversation, despite the lack of pedigree compared to some of these other guys we're talking about. But all right, now give me the known commodity in Nicole, who is what he is, and the super talented guy.
Yeah, I'm just so down on Kadarius Toney. I mean, it's just I think my two would maybe end up being Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, but I think if I only had five, Sky Moore would be my fifth receiver over Toney.
And Kent, how much of this is the fact that they spent draft capital on Kadarius?
They spent more on Sky Moore.
Yeah,
they spent a second rounder on Sky and a third rounder on Kadarius. Go ahead, Kent.
No, I don't feel good about any of these answers, and for me, it's not about the draft capital at this point. Like we can say, hey, corn dog for Kadarius Toney was worth the draft,
fair enough,
right?
That punt return,
in the return,
right,
the return in the Super Bowl. Yeah, but I think it's more just me reading between the tea leaves on what this team's talking about, and then also, just acknowledging that there's not any great option, and you want to take the guy that has a ton of talent. And they really, they say good things about his work ethic and how he is in the receiver room and how he is in the building and all that stuff. So, I guess it's more just like, I guess it's these two than it is like this. It's these two for me, right? Like that's kind of how I feel about this entire group in general.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about, which one of those guys you would keep as your fifth or sixth between Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, and they were viewed at worst your third or fourth. If you said MVS and Rashee Rice, this time last year, they're third and fourth. So while it isn't ideal, but we're also talking about the fifth or sixth receiver from the Kansas City Chiefs, and at least there are three legitimate or what feels like pretty legitimate receivers at the top. And another guy that would be your fourth that played a lot of snaps last year in Justin Watson because of how bad the overall wide receiver group ended up being. It's a much better position to be in than wondering if Amir Smith-Marset or Nico or Justin Ross or who's going to make the squad as the sixth or seventh player when your tops were MVS, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and rookie Rashee Rice.
Oh, absolutely. Whatever happens with the Rashee Rice situation, this is a really scary offense. If you've got a Hollywood, a Rashee Rice, a Xavier Worthy, and a Travis Kelce, like that is a terrifying group. I think that kind of puts defenses back on their heels, starts scaring teams a little bit about what the offensive capabilities are of this group, and the fact that some of these players that we had the conversations about one of them breaking out and hoping one or two of these guys steps up and takes the next step as a player to allow this offense to continue to have success. We found out that, Rashee Rice was that guy last year, and, he's had his issues this offseason. But, the fact that the conversation is more about wide receiver 5 or 6 rather than who winds up being, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. It's not that conversation anymore. We have a pretty good pulse on who the top 4 receivers are on this team, and you got to feel good about where they stand with that.
Visiting with Kent Swanson, KC Sports Network. It's brought to you by the Kansas Department of Transportation and Drive to Zero Coalition, inviting you to join fans with a plan. If you're going to be drinking, always designate a sober driver. Kent, what do you think the plan moving forward is then at wide receiver for the Chiefs? And this is a conversation that, we've had a few times on the air this week already because of the numbers that Justin Jefferson got. We had the conversation last week because of the contract that Jalen Waddle got. What's the strategy, do you think, or if there is going to be one particular one for the Chiefs and how they approach wide receiver / weapon / tight end, pass catcher moving forward with what the market is doing right now for the wide receivers?
Yeah, we actually had someone ask if we, on our show last night, if we thought that Hollywood Brown would get an extension from the Chiefs after this year. And, I don't think this team is going to be in the market of paying receivers handsomely, the way that we are seeing the wide receiver market blowing up. Not to say that, Xavier Worthy doesn't come out and have, a really solid rookie contract that they won't pay him, but I don't think they're ever going to be near that top of market type of situation with the receiver room. I think they're going to continue to try to insulate themselves with draft picks. And, they hit on Rashee Rice on the field, and we'll see if he can stay out of trouble, enough to earn the trust of this team. And, the best ability is availability right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, if he can stay available for the duration of his rookie contract and, Xavier Worthy pans out, then you can go back to the Juju Smith-Schuster, Hollywood Brown type well, where you are finding a, mid-20s reclamation / someone that wants to, try to earn big dollars by betting on themselves with Patrick LaVon Mahomes. And I think there could always be, or most years there will be someone like that the Chiefs could, potentially integrate within, the offensive structure. And, they've got Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice under control for the next 3 years together. They got Xavier Worthy for the next 5 years if they'd like it. And, if those two pan out, they continue to hit, on some of these draft picks, that allows them to be more flexible with, what investments they make in the free agency market. So that's kind of, I don't think they're ever going to be paying heavily at the receiver position, at least for the near term. And unless it becomes something that keeps them from winning the Super Bowl, right? Because that's, the teams, act to make aggressive corrections, and maybe it gets to a point where they just feel like they need to pay big, but I think they can just keep the cycles churning right now.
Is there, is there more of a concerted effort to find the post-Travis Kelce replacement? Not answer, not a person that can take up that, bulk of the offense, but some sort of a replacement that they'll spend more resources and not just, the Noah Gray, the Jared Wiley, Irv Smith, Jody Fortson, for the last few years, like trying to find somebody to go along and complement Travis Kelce, where, last year, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer, Musgrave, second-round tight ends that were taken after the Chiefs took FAU. And so is there is there more of a concerted effort then that, okay, these wide receivers are getting crazy amount of money and Travis Kelce's as good as the top-end wide receivers, at least production, and he's getting half that, so maybe the tight end market is where they go and spend a little bit more draft capital resources so that they can keep that aspect of their offense while also deflating the price of their overall weapons?
Man, we've been talking about the Travis Kelce replacement for multiple years now,
Really?
right?
Really?
And, it's just, I think when you look at it from the outside looking in, we say, okay, this guy's 35. He's had he had knee injuries that he just played through his entire career. He just doesn't seem to matter. And, he just keeps putting up numbers and playing well. And we saw that, we saw him kind of, have some struggles early in the season. And this year showed his age a little bit dealing with the injuries, but then comes out and plays phenomenally in the Super Bowl. But there was a comment that I heard from Patrick Mahomes. I can't remember if he said it in a clip. I can't remember if he tweeted it out, but it was something to the effect of, like, I'm going to keep Travis around as long as I can. I'm going to keep him here, and I'm going to try to keep him here as long as humanly possible. Like, he's continuing to recruit to keep Travis Kelce here, and so on the outside looking in, we look at a 35-year-old tight end, but on the inside, they've got a better pulse on that. I don't know if we should be talking about, strategically the Travis Kelce replacement, because they're never going to find a true Travis Kelce replacement. I actually think whenever Travis Kelce is needed to be replaced, it's going to wind up being a receiver that can operate more in the middle of the field, and they might make a bigger investment there.
Yeah.
That might be the point where they actually spin at the wide receiver spot, but I don't think they're ever going to try to truly replace Travis Kelce. They're going to take swings like they are with the Noah Grays and the Jared Wileys, and honestly, I like those swings. I think they're good contributors, and if Kelce missed some time, I think those guys can do an admirable job as, a tight end 2 type player in this league.
Ken Swanson, KC Sports Network, kcsn.substack.com, the KC Laboratory Podcast. Kent, thank you for the time as always. I appreciate it, brother. We'll catch up in a few weeks, man.
Good talking to you, Jason.
Absolutely. There's Kent Swanson. It is brought to you by Kansas Department of Transportation. Sports Radio 810, proud to partner with the Kansas Drive to Zero Coalition and encourage you to join Kansas fans with a plan. Always have a designated driver or other sober ride to and from your destination. We do have a name to go along with the news that broke about an hour ago that the Chiefs had canceled their team activities for today after a Chiefs player suffered a seizure in special teams meetings and went into cardiac arrest, was immediately transported to a hospital, is in stable condition. That player, Tom Pelissero, reporting, is B.J. Thompson, defensive lineman, defensive end, appeared in a game last year for the Chiefs, but the 5th-round pick out of Stephen F. Austin, B.J. Thompson, is the one that had suffered the seizure, went into cardiac arrest, but in stable condition, seems to be doing well now. So certainly thoughts to a scary situation out at Arrowhead at the practice facilities, and understandably canceling all of the team activities for today. And they'll be back out there tomorrow. But Chiefs trainers and medical personnel responded immediately, transported to a hospital, now in stable condition, B.J. Thompson, with this morning's scary news about an hour ago when we found out what was going on out at Arrowhead. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. More Zone next. 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Myron Metcalf coming up at noon because of the biggest news nationally that is going on. Obviously, big news around here locally with the concerns around B.J. Thompson and suffering a seizure, going into cardiac arrest in a special teams meeting today. Stable condition. Looks like the worst was avoided. Knock on wood. Hopefully that is going to be the case. But the Chiefs have moved their team activities from today to tomorrow. They have postponed it for one day, and they'll be back out there on Friday and then speaking with the media tomorrow afternoon. So that's certainly news around here. Mecole Hardman re-signing for 1 year. But the big news nationally, and that is the connection between the Lakers and Dan Hurley and what that would mean for college basketball, what it would mean for the Lakers. A lot of people are connecting the dots of why in the heck would you want to be around LeBron as a coach in the NBA? And I get that sentiment. Understandable. He's a guy that if he doesn't like you, he's going to want you fired and move on. LeBron seems to be a pretty big fan of Dan Hurley. But this report from Brian Windhorst is interesting. This was earlier on Get Up, and it's a conversation with Brian Windhorst. And you hear the question from Mike Greenberg specifically about LeBron James and Dan Hurley if he were to be the head coach.
LeBron James, that window is a pretty narrow one, obviously. The man's going to be 40 years old. But they're looking much longer term in this than just that.
That's what LeBron message that he gave to the Lakers when they discussed this opening. He said to them, do not make a decision that's based on me. Do not make a decision based on the 24-25 season. Make a decision for Anthony Davis. Make a decision for the next decade of this organization. That's what his advice to the Lakers was. I know that a lot of people think that LeBron is, in charge of a coaching search. That's just not the case. That's the message that he gave. This type of hire would follow that. It would be something LeBron would be comfortable with. Also, we know that LeBron has a respect for Dan Hurley. He has said so publicly to tens of millions of people on his social media very recently. The other thing is, this is important to understand, this is a bit of a perfect storm. Not only what Woj described, the challenges in the college game. The Lakers don't have a huge amount of candidates here. They were going to have to make a risk hire. They're going to have to take somebody without experience in the NBA level or somebody who maybe isn't maybe the perfect fit. If you're going to make a risk, make the reward go high. And this type of move is a high-risk, high-reward type of situation.
There's the tweet that's going around when J.J. Redick had Dan Hurley on his podcast that LeBron James replying and saying he's so damn good, along with his staff, super creative with their O, love it. And it was a fascinating conversation that J.J. Redick had with Dan Hurley because Dan Hurley's offense is legit. It's unbelievable to watch. It is a thing of beauty to watch. And to hear him describe how they created the offense. It's not just we're going to do what this team does, or we're going to do the dribble drive. We're going to run the flex. We're going to run some high-low. We're going to do we're going to have a pick and roll. We're going to run motion. We're going to do whatever, all these different things. We're going to run in guns, pace and space. He sat down with Luke Murray, Bill's son, and looked at NFL teams and said, this play on this NFL team has like 6 different options where they can go.
West Coast offense.
Right. They can hand off. They can check out of the handoff. They can switch the handoff to the other side. They can throw the ball to the tight end. They can throw the ball to the wide receiver. They can check into something else depending on the defense, and it's all created from one initial play. So how do they do that on the college side? And he and Luke Murray got together and decided to create formations that then can play off of defense and players that were out there, and then what the specific, which is really difficult to pick up. But once you pick it up, good God, the offense is unstoppable. I mean, UConn's offense was just relentless, and they were getting open shots and layups, and it's like, how do they keep doing that? Well, I mean, because they sat down specifically and said, let's do something different. Let's see if we can take something NFL and translate it to college basketball. And, if you've got that ability at the college game, then certainly ball. You can do that at the NBA level. And it certainly seems like LeBron James is a fan of what the guy has done offensively. And I would guess that Luke Murray would have to go along with him to the Lakers. If Dan Hurley's already credited Luke with being a big part of, that offense, then you would want to bring him along to continue that offense. Just like who was the coach for the Bulls that was the coach of the triangle offense. Like Phil Jackson was the coach of the Bulls, but they had a specific coach that was the coach of the triangle offense there in Chicago. Luke Murray could be that for the Lakers, but interesting there of like, okay, well, LeBron's going to decide this. Brian Winter was saying LeBron specifically said, this is not about me, because there's been plenty of times it has been about him, but he's also recognizing his time is almost done. So if you're going to make a coaching decision, it's got to be for Anthony Davis and the other guys and Bronny to figure out how the Lakers are going to move forward. He didn't say Bronny, or he did? I'm not sure. He said Anthony Davis, but he meant Bronny.
That's what I'm thinking.
Next generation of Lakers players.
It makes too much sense. And, with this potential hire, I mean, good for LeBron not really looking at his age 40 season and saying, hey, let's bring in the guy that can win me at least one more championship. Because also he understands that just him and Anthony Davis aren't going to be the ones to get it done. They're going to need guys to develop, and Dan Hurley might be that guy. From a college standpoint, which I know for a lot of people out there, that might be the bigger wonder right now of what does UConn look like. If both Dan and Luke go to the Lakers, you talk about having to not start over, but you got to go hire a coach on June 6th, June 7th. I mean, the transfer portal has, again, I think for UConn, I don't know they
would have 30 days.
30 days to enter. It's kind of like with Bob Huggins last year.
The coach leaves, you've got a 30-day extra transfer window opening for every single player on UConn's roster, including top 10 recruit Liam McNeely.
And I think, too, with UConn, I mean, the players are going to be wondering, all right, maybe I will stay here, but I got to know who the next coach is going to be. And at that point, if you are a head coach, aside from it being money, why would you want to be the one to go take over Dan Hurley? Because now you're the coach, yes, maybe taking over a great roster, but you've immediately got the pressure of, this is the two-time national championship team, and I got to take over for the guy that nobody ever wanted to see leave.
And the roster may not be what it is right now.
You can get in there and everybody leaves.
Was it 2 days ago that Caravan took his name out of the NBA draft? Like whatever it was recent that Alex Caravan tweeted out, I'm returning, let's go for 3. If Dan Hurley's leaving for the Lakers, does Caravan keep his name in the NBA draft? Like, I don't know, right? I mean, unless he was just got the feedback and was like, you should probably return, okay? Or if there was NIL money going to Caravan that made it worth it to return to UConn as opposed to going to the NBA. And, oh, by the way, I can go win 3 straight NCAA championships. But he had recently announced that he was returning.
Said about like a week ago here.
Like I said, yesterday or a week ago. Felt like it was just yesterday.
Recently, I mean,
very
recently.
Right, and so how long has this discussion been going on with Dan Hurley and the Lakers? But Caravan would be immediately available. Hassan Diarra would be immediately available. Solomon Ball, Jalen Stewart, Samson Johnson. Many people are tweeting out this morning about Liam McNeely, a 5-star recruit. You've got Aiden Mahaney, that was one of the bigger transfers from St. Mary's. The Michigan transfer that ended up going to UConn that I don't know his name. But, he would be out. All of those guys, the guys that make up what is a top 5 team in the country, consensus, would be available for 30 days to figure out where they're going to go. And, boy, every single team would be calling them.
This feels like a monumental shift in the game of basketball because even though it's, odds-wise, UConn probably wouldn't win 3 straight just because nobody'd really done 2 straight except for Florida, and been a long time since that. So for a lot of the teams at the top, I know for Kansas fans out there listening, being the preseason number 1 again, I mean, you'll feel good about Kansas's roster having Bill Self, but UConn the last 2 years has shown that it doesn't matter what seed you are in the tournament, we're going to destroy you, to pummel you. I can't remember a 2-year stretch that dominant by a team, or at least a tournament stretch that dominant. They beat everybody by double digits. It was never close in any of their games. They absolutely housed everybody they played. And then now you wonder, does UConn make a smooth transition? Hard to. I think a lot of coaches at this point have already done the recruiting. They've already gone through the transfer portal. They've assembled their staff. They feel like, hey, this is where we need to be in the summer part of the season. Why would I want to uproot, unless I got a massive deal, millions and millions of dollars to go to UConn? Because there's no guarantee you inherit all those players. maybe 50% of that roster goes, if Dan Hurley's not coming back and Luke Hurley's not coming back, I'm going elsewhere. And at that point, you're trying to bring your guys that you just recruited to your school to go and play at UConn.
The question I would have, and this would be big for KU, if Dan Hurley takes over the Lakers, Liam McNeely came down to UConn, Indiana, and KU were the three teams he was looking at, and there were a lot of crystal ball predictions that he was going to KU. There have been already plenty of people at Indiana that have been talking about, hey, oh, wait, is Liam McNeely all of a sudden available to maybe be out there for 30 days? Well, what if Liam McNeely thought Elmarco Jackson wasn't going to be on KU when he made his decision to go to UConn? Because Elmarco Jackson ain't on KU this year. We know that. There's an opening in your starting rotation for KU. Now, he would have probably been starting wherever he goes, but Indiana's roster is the same as it was when he chose UConn. KU's is not. There's an immediate need for somebody to go and be immediately plugged into the starting five. So if Dan Hurley goes to the Lakers, I will pencil in KU as the favorite to land McNeely if he decides to transfer. And now you're talking about shifts across college basketball. Where does Caravan go? If McNeely's leaving, is Caravan going to stay at UConn? And now you're not going to win three straight. Like you want to win three straight because you're getting a top 10 player coming in. Plus the number of returners is Hassan Diarra, sixth man of the year in the Big East. Is he staying around or going somewhere else? Now you start to, one person leaves, the other person leaves, and they go, well, what are we doing here? Let's go somewhere else and try to win.
I'm blanking on the Dayton transfer, too, that went to UConn that was, I think it was down between UConn and Kansas, Kobe Brea. I think it was. He shot like 50% or something on uncontested threes last year. That's another name because, Kansas brought in the Mississippi State kid yesterday right after the Elmarco Jackson news. But I think there's still one scholarship spot open. If Dan Hurley does go, you have to imagine that they're going to be reaching out and saying, there's a spot for you, and there could be a starting spot or there could be a big-time spot off the bench for you because we know how loaded Kansas's roster is this upcoming year.
Absolutely. No, somebody, unless they hire somebody there at UConn that's going to keep everybody intact, there are some players that are going to land on some pretty good schools that could make a difference in whether or not a team wins a national championship or not. We'll take a timeout, come back, wrap up this hour next.
All right, everyone. Again, Greenlight Dispensary is giving out deep discounts on some of their best products every Monday and Friday this June, and tomorrow is another June drop. So go online to Greenlight Dispensary and use their AI bud tender to help you select what you want and then place your order for the drive-thru or the grab-and-go window. And once you're there, you can talk to an in-person bud tender that can answer any of your questions. Mention the June drops you heard here on 810 and see what they have for Friday's drop. So remind yourself tomorrow to go check them out or check them out today at greenlightdispensary.com because they have a bunch of different options because not all cannabis is flower. They have oils, chocolates, gummies are my favorite, and even sodas. The possibilities are endless, and they're always trying out different options at Greenlight Dispensary. Mention 810 sent you as well for 20% off your first visit to any of the KC area Greenlight locations. One's at State Line, the other's in Independence and Bannister, and one in Harrisonville as well. So if you're trying to save money tomorrow, do not forget that tomorrow is Friday's drop at Greenlight Dispensary, so go check them out and see what they have to offer. You can go sign up for Missouri's #1 loyalty program and find them online at greenlightdispensary.com. That's greenlightdispensary.com.
Was Missouri in the running? No, that's why I said once Missouri was out of the running, they weren't in the running. Then I stopped caring. I didn't know where Kobe Mayo was going to go. I love Kobe. I love Mayo. I just didn't know that connection of where that person was going to end up. So he is at Kentucky, not at UConn. But it doesn't mean there aren't going to be a number of players that could be available. You said John Fanta tweeted out that Dan Hurley had told his team he's in negotiations with the Lakers right now.
Believe so.
But
yes.
but he told the team we're going to continue as usual. So we've got practice today. We got workouts.
1 hour ago he tweeted. Yep.
So an hour ago, Dan Hurley told his team today he is in negotiations with the Lakers, but they are not going to change anything right now. They're going to go about business as usual because negotiations could break down.
That'll work.
Or, like, no, we're still going to practice. You don't just get to take today off just because I'm going to the Lakers. Somebody's going to coach you, I think. is this between Dan Hurley and the Lakers. Joining us now from ESPN, our college basketball insider, Myron Medcalf, joining us here in the zone. Myron, we wake up to a 6 a.m., or maybe other people are up. I don't know what your lives are like, but wake up to a 6 a.m. Woj bomb that changes the discourse across the country in sports radio.
Yeah, man, I don't know what to make of that, man. You know, I mean, for Woj to drop that, and then it's like, you know it's big, man, because the finals are tonight. You know, and I mean, imagine having news, I mean, in basketball that somehow supersedes that. Like, usually, okay, if something happened with LeBron or KD or something like that, maybe, but this just shows you how big the Lakers' job is, and you attach Dan Hurley to it, man. It is a shocking development, especially with all the J.J. Redick buzz that was happening around that job. So, I mean, this is one of those moments, man, where I know sometimes in our business we exaggerate, but, I mean, this would change a lot of things, I think, in college basketball if Dan Hurley were to take this gig.
You know, maybe we all missed the point when somebody said that J.J. Redick podcast. They were talking about the guest on the J.J. Redick podcast and not J.J. Redick exactly him taking over the Lakers. We missed that. Was it known, Myron, that, or is it known, or is it even there that there was this sort of desire or dream for Dan Hurley to coach in the NBA?
Yes. Yeah, the NBA dream is not a secret. He's been open about that. He's talked about that. But also, as a guy who is a top college basketball right now, it had to be the right job.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't UConn 7 years ago or 6 years ago whenever he took over, where they were kind of on the rise. This is a guy who's in a position to command big dollars. He's at a spot that's won back-to-back national championships. So I don't think we're having the same conversation if the Pistons had called or the Wizards called, right? Like, I don't think he wanted to go to the NBA just to do it. But, and I know people are talking on Twitter about the appeal of the Lakers job. Let's be serious, people.
The appeal?
It's the Lakers,
the
man.
Lakers, that's the appeal.
Yeah, it's the Los Angeles Lakers. It's L.A., it's all of that. So I think that's a different conversation for him than it would have been if some other NBA team had called, but they didn't have that same profile.
It's like 15 years ago, Nick Saban leaving to coach the Cowboys. It's the Cowboys. Like, well, does he really want to go to the NFL? It's the Cowboys. It's like it's the Lakers. I mean, come on. Like, it's that. And I had mentioned this earlier that being and I'll ask you about LeBron and the factor that goes in with that, because a lot of people feeling like that would be a detriment. That would be something that would lead you to not want to coach that particular team because of LeBron, or if he thinks he's the coach, or driving coaches out, whatever. Tom Izzo had an opportunity with the Cavs and coaching LeBron, and it was like, Izzo wanted to coach LeBron. That would have been great, but it was LeBron on the Cavs. And if you want to coach LeBron, great, but you're the Cavs coach, and if LeBron goes somewhere else because of a contract, I mean, he's not going to stay just because of who the coach is. He's going to go wherever, and he ends up going to the Lakers, but you're then the Cavs coach. This is the Lakers that has LeBron, not LeBron on the team, whatever. That, to me, is the difference when people are connecting the LeBron thing. I think back to Tom Izzo. That would have been specifically taking that job so he could coach LeBron. This is taking the Lakers that LeBron is on the roster.
Well, I mean, not so fast, though, right? I mean, because LeBron has an out. He has an opt-out clause right now. So, while all signs point to him returning to the Lakers, he also can become a free agent and do whatever he wants. Obviously, there's the Bronny factor. So my guess is actually Dan Hurley's probably having a lot of the same conversations that Tom Izzo was having.
Yeah.
What is LeBron's future? I think the difference is Anthony Davis is there and they've locked him up. Yeah. So you're going to have a top 10 player no matter what happens. And the beauty of being in L.A. is you're always going to attract top free agents. Like, people will always want to play in L.A. Maybe not everybody, but there will always be top 25 players in the league who want to put that Lakers jersey on. So, it might be easier than the recruiting trail and the transfer portal is right now for Dan Hurley. So if you get LeBron back, that's a couple of years maybe. Anthony Davis is more of the future here. But Woj is talking about a long-term deal. So I don't think you do this unless you can establish your brand, your culture, and you can get the time to actually do that.
Yeah.
So my guess is this going to have to be some 8 to 10 year deal in order to get Dan Hurley to listen. Because if I was him, I'm not leaving a place where I'm a legend, future Hall of Famer, for you to hire me for a couple of years and do me like you did Darvin Ham. Like either I come in and I establish who I am, or I don't take the job. So my guess is he has a lot of leverage right now.
And there's so much like the Lakers and the NBA can pay a lot of money to a coach, and I don't know the exact contract that Andy Reid has, but I'm going to guess it's around $20 million with the Chiefs that he's taking care of, and Dan Hurley with his contract of 6 years, $32 million. If the Lakers are we'll give you 6 years, $20 million per. So over the next 6 years, you can earn 120 or 32. Okay, honey, we're going to L.A. I mean, there's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's not even a question at that point. $32 million is awesome. $120 million is better. So, I mean, at that point, it's not even a question. What's his fit then in the NBA? Because I've seen some people say, he's too demonstrative on the sideline. It won't, fit in the NBA. The college system and the offense. How does that translate? And then I've seen others that go, it's perfect. It's perfect because of the development, because of the offensive system that he'll be able to utilize, that it isn't just go buy a really premier free agent and then you're going to go and win. You need more development, and Dan Hurley's going to be great in the NBA. How do you view his fit going from UConn to the Lakers if this happens?
Well, the track record isn't good for college coaches, right?
Mm-hmm,
I mean, a lot of coaches have left. I mean, you mentioned Beeline, Pitino, I think was like 192 and 220 or something like that between the Knicks and the Celtics. Fred Hoiberg was doing great at Iowa State, and they fired him. So, I mean, it's just been difficult for coaches to go to that level. And I think the biggest thing is the autonomy and independence they lose. Like when you were in college and you're a winning head coach, you've won national championships, obviously Bill Self and others know, you run the show.
Yep.
I mean, the AD essentially works for you. Nobody bothers you. Nobody tells you what you can or cannot do. They just ask you, what do you need to keep winning? And then they stay out of your way. But you pull all the strings. You recruit the players you want, sign the players you want, sign the coaches, assistant coaches you want. If he goes to the Lakers, I think he's probably the fifth most powerful person in that franchise. I mean, it's Jeannie Buss. And then it's LeBron, and then it's Rob Pelinka and Anthony Davis, right? So, I mean, he's taking a job, if he does, where he's fifth in command, essentially. So I think that's why it's been so hard for college coaches to adjust to that level, because you are literally giving up your power and authority that you have at the collegiate level. And I think that just makes things really really difficult. But he's also been a coach who's won back-to-back championships in a modern era where everybody in college is trying to be in the NBA. I mean, he's played teams that have a lot of NBA-level guys, positionless basketball, they shoot a lot of threes. So can he coach at that level? Yeah. I mean, if you tell me Dan Hurley's going to have NBA-level talent, I think he can win on paper. But the demeanor is something that I wonder how the league will accept that. That makes more sense in the 90s, that kind of edge for a coach in the NBA. Now coaches are mostly quiet, man. Like, we don't hear from a lot of coaches in the NBA. So that demeanor, to me, only works if he wins big.
Yeah.
If he struggles and he maintains that demeanor, then the Lakers are going to pay off a big amount of money in that contract because it's not going to last, because that's just not going to work.
In the, what we see in the NBA oftentimes, or at least now, it almost feels like, to a degree, the coach is immaterial. It's like an unnamed henchman in a movie. It's like, well, we needed extra to stand over here and wear this outfit and uniform. I mean, you're going to play the role of a coach here in this movie, but the leading man and the stars are the ones that are sitting on the bench and playing in the game. I mean, we had to look it up earlier. I was going off the top of my head, so we ended up looking it up. The fourth longest tenured coach is Michael Malone. The fifth longest is Taylor Jenkins, and he's been there 5 years. You're talking about the fifth longest tenured NBA coach at his current spot is 5 years. It's such a churn and burn. You win NBA Coach of the Year, it's like a death knell. 2 years later, you're fired. So there's that aspect of the NBA now as well, and maybe that's the negotiation that Dan Hurley's in, is that this ain't going to be I take over and 3 years later I'm gone. No, I want a while to establish the culture like you talked about. It's going to take a little bit to do all of these things, and I won't be a coach of the year and 2 years later fired.
Yeah, and I'm sure the Lakers will tell him that. But they also told Darvin Ham that, so, you know what I mean? It's like, so Bill Self, I was in Bill Self's office some years ago, just having a conversation with him. And he told me when he was thinking about the NBA that he figured he'd get fired after 2 years. Like when he was thinking about an NBA job, he was like, yeah, I'd take it, get the money. But I know I'd get fired after a couple of years because they fired everybody. To your point, the NBA challenge is you need the personnel more than anything, and you're not a GM. The draft dictates the kind of young talent you bring in. The salary cap dictates what you're able to do. There's just so many restraints that you don't have to deal with at the collegiate level, which is why so many guys get fired. So I'm sure they're promising Dan Hurley the world. I'm sure they're saying, hey, man, we're not going to do you like Darvin Ham. You're going to be here 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, but they've said that to a lot of coaches, in their history, and that hasn't happened. So, but I think Dan understands that, and he probably figures, I'm going to be really rich, no matter which way it goes. But the ego, man, seems to compel guys in his position to say, I'll be different than the other guys, and I think that's why he's going to take this job. I don't think it's the money, the security, all those things. He knows that stuff is not guaranteed. But it's the idea of prove everybody wrong. And that's kind of what his career has been built on. And if you go to the Lakers and you win there, you become one of the greatest coaches in the history of the game at any level. That's too rich to turn down, I think.
And Myron Metcalf's our guest from ESPN. And one of the things that, I had talked about, and you mentioned Rick Pitino, Pitino goes and wins in 95, has the run in 96, probably wins it without an injured Derek Anderson. And, and then he goes and takes the Celtics job. But when that didn't work out with the Celtics, everybody wanted him. Like a college coach, name your place. Michigan, UNLV, Louisville, everybody that was open said, we want Rick Pitino. And that would be the same thing with Dan Hurley. Like Brad Stevens can go if he says, I want to go back to college right now. Okay, name your price. Like Kentucky fans were longing for Billy Donovan, and it's been 10 years since he's coached in college basketball. And the SEC is more of a bear than it was, when he was coaching before he went to the NBA. Dan Hurley would be able to name his number and name his spot if it failed in the NBA and he was heading back to college. Like that's one hell of a fallback plan to know that you would have a number of colleges you could sort of pick between to go and take over a big name program. You're not starting at Rhode Island again.
No, I mean, people would fire coaches. Not true. People would fire coaches if they knew they could get Dan Hurley in a couple of years. Man, it'd be like the prom king or prom queen moving back to their hometown. There's still a whole lot of people who want that, who still want to see if they got a chance, even though you're 37, right? There's people who've been holding on to those dreams for 20 years. And that would be Dan Hurley's situation. A whole lot of people who wish they had a shot at a Dan Hurley, and now maybe it doesn't work out in L.A., and he's back at some other big-time school. But, yeah, to your point, that's why I think he can do it, right? Mm-hmm. Because he's not going to lose his opportunity to coach at a high level in college. However, would he lose his opportunity to coach at a high level in the NBA if he says no? If you say no to the Lakers, I think that's a lot different than Billy Donovan taking the Orlando Magic job and then changing his mind a few days later. I think it's a lot different than that. This is one of the top jobs in all of sports. And if they are going to court you, and let's be honest, they're courting him because they know he wants the job.
Yes.
And then you suddenly say no? Mm-hmm. What does that mean for the other NBA gigs in the future?
It means they're not going to waste their time.
He's got to probably feel like, this is my opportunity if I want to coach the NBA.
Yeah, what it would mean is that if I'm another NBA team, I'm not wasting my time to call Dan Hurley because he turned down the Lakers, and we're not the Lakers. What are we doing? It's when Dan Hurley turned down Kentucky without even really giving it much of a thought, like if you're another program out there, no need to call Dan Hurley. It's one of those you call him and make him say no. He dismissed the UK job. He's not taking your job. It's a waste of a phone call. Back in the day, it would have been a waste of your minutes. Okay, I know you got unlimited minutes now, but at least it's a waste of your time to go and make that call. All right, let's talk about the college aspect and the college impact here. Myron Metcalf's our guest. 30-day window would open up if he takes this job, and by all accounts, it's a top 5 team. is it a top 5 team based on roster and personnel and players when you factor in, okay, top 5 because of the players and also Dan Hurley is the coach? What happens with this team with the 30-day window, and who are the players that everybody in America will be calling immediately?
Well, I guarantee everybody on that roster woke up to a bunch of "Hey, stranger" text messages, right? You know what I mean?
Right. Long time no
like
talk.
When you go home for the holidays, you get all those random texts from people you haven't talked to in a decade. They're getting those because I think they'll be poached. I mean, you got to look at Alex Caravan was a pro, was going to stay in the draft, came back to try to three-peat. I mean, it's got to be a tough situation for a guy like him. Liam McNeely's a McDonald's All-American, top 10 recruit. The whole world's going to go after him. Samson Johnson, I think, is an elite big. He just played behind Donovan Clingan for the last 2 years. Like, that was his only challenge, but now this is his breakout season, potentially. Aiden Mahaney, the St. Mary's transfer. Hassan Diarra, I mean, a young guy who, a veteran who has helped multiple championship teams. So I think the coaches are circling now because I do think that's a top 5 team with or without Dan Hurley from a personnel standpoint, but Hurley solidifies that. And all those guys want to play for him. And I think if he leaves, I think it's open season at UConn. And I think they'll lose most, if not all. Could you bring in a coach to maybe stop the bleeding a little bit? Maybe. People are talking about Kamani Young, the associate head coach. Would that help? You call an Ed Cooley or a Bruce Pearl. Okay, maybe. But, these guys are coming off a championship run. The guys who came want to win a championship, and they want to do it with Dan Hurley. So I bet every coach in the country is just sending out some feeler messages right now to see who might be available because they're going to pounce if this move happens.
Well, we had mentioned in the previous hour that you mentioned Liam McNeely, top 10 recruit in the country and McDonald's All-American. It came down to UConn, Indiana, and KU. And, KU got Storr, and it was like, okay, well, that means that, McNeely may head somewhere else. But that was before Elmarco Jackson went down with the patellar injury. And now there seems to be a spot on that roster that would be open. And if he chose UConn over Indiana and KU, well, Indiana's still the same roster they were when you chose UConn. Kansas is different. They've got a spot right there that would be, glaring red flashing light of here's a starting spot right here that we don't have anymore because Elmarco's going down, and it wouldn't be this guy's returning for a sophomore year. That would be a name that I would think would have a big interest level locally. That if Dan Hurley's gone, I would probably say KU would be the leader in the clubhouse for Liam McNeely.
Yeah, I mean, and it just the timing. You hate to see what happened to Elmarco, right?
Right.
Working out, everything I heard, great summer for him, great off season, and then this unfortunate situation happens. But yeah, I mean, it'd be perfect for a guy who wants to win a championship, for a guy who's going to watch Johnny Furphy go from unknown prospect to first round in the NBA draft, right? Like that's to me what you look at is you go, look, people didn't know Johnny Furphy in December. And now look at where he's projected to go in the NBA draft. That can be used. So, yeah, I'm sure Kansas is putting those feelers out because the guys on that roster want to win championships, right? They don't want to just go play just to play. They want to go compete for a title. And let's be honest, man, there aren't that many places in America you can do that with right now. Kansas, certainly, they'll be number one preseason entering 24-25. So I think certainly that's a call you make if this move goes through because I'm certain Liam McNeely will open up his recruitment again.
It's funny you mentioned Furphy and people not knowing who he is. Myron Metcalf's our guest. There was Greg Gurley, who's the color commentator for the KU radio network, former KU Jayhawk with Roy Williams. He told a story that last summer when they were in their foreign trip, it was Puerto Rico, so not necessarily, but the trip that they get to take over the summer. And Bill Self said, hey, there's a guy that we're looking at in Australia named Johnny Furphy. Go and take a look at him and see what you think. And Greg Gurley came back and he was like, yeah, nice player, good shooter or whatever, and talked about him. And he said something that Bill Self was like, no, that's not the guy. And Greg told the story, and there he goes, apparently Furphy is a popular name in Australia, so Furphy was so unknown that even Bill Self telling me to go look at him, I didn't know who he was talking about or which guy to watch, so I had to go and find other film to who Johnny Furphy was. So it's funny that you mentioned Johnny Furphy was an unknown. Yeah, to people around the program too.
Yeah, man, that's hilarious, man, because he rose so fast. And I remember us having a conversation. And I remember people being like, well, he comes back for another year maybe, right? I'm like, there's no chance.
Yeah.
Like, if the NBA is saying you might be a first-round pick, in a draft like this, you got to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you're a Liam McNeely, a guy like that, you got to be looking at it and going, you know what? I want to coach for I want to play for one of the premier coaches in college basketball. If Hurley leaves, I'm no longer going to be able to do that at UConn, no matter who they replace him with.
Yeah.
It won't be a Hurley type. So I think KU would certainly be a team on his short list.
Yep. Last one for you, Myron Metcalf from ESPN. Just a prediction. Is he the coach? Is Dan Hurley the Lakers coach next year?
I think he'll be the Lakers coach by tonight. I mean, to me, Jeannie Buss not being able to lure Dan Hurley from UConn, the embarrassment that would be for that organization, right? And maybe even for the NBA. I just don't think you go full press like this. You give Woj this information unless you have your guy. I think they have him locked up. Dan Hurley's just trying to figure out how to break that news to people he really cares about in that UConn community.
I'm in agreement. I had said that by tomorrow we're gonna Dan Hurley is going to be the head coach of the Lakers, but you've got it. He'll be the Lakers coach by tonight. I am in agreement with that. Myron, you're the man as always. Appreciate it on short notice coming on and joining us, man. Loving the show on the weekend here, driving around. You and Matt Jones do a fantastic job. So thank you for joining us today, man.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. There's Myron Metcalf from ESPN, our college basketball insider. But the news today at 5:50 this morning, Central Time, the Woj bomb that the Lakers and Dan Hurley are in negotiations to be the next Lakers coach. And I made the comparison earlier in the show, and I'm in agreement with Myron Metcalf. As I said, is he the coach of the Lakers next year? Meaning just is he the coach? And he'll be the Lakers coach by tonight. And I made the comparison to Tyreek Hill, that on that day in 22, in March in 22, when we were on the air here and we got the news from Rap Sheet or Schefter, whoever reported it, that the Chiefs have granted Tyreek Hill permission to seek a trade. An hour later, he was traded to the Dolphins. Once that news got out, it was essentially done. And it's one thing for the news to be like, the Lakers are looking at J.J. Redick, versus the Lakers are in heavy negotiations and offering a contract to Dan Hurley that is huge and, life-changing money and extensive with this contract. And he has talked about his dream and interest in being an NBA coach. This is the Lakers, and he is in negotiations with the Lakers. As he said, Woj doesn't get the information unless they feel pretty strongly that they're going to get their guy, that they are so many steps down the road that they've already passed the biggest hurdles, and now it's the T's and the I's and the signatures and then the announcement and telling the players, et cetera.
The incentives and all that minor.
Right. Yeah, maybe
so
some
here's
of those.
a example of two things. That time's a flat circle, but also this is bigger than just we're interested as a Lakers side. A tweet from Sports Illustrated on 5/1 of 2014. The Lakers plan to reach out to John Calipari and Kevin Ollie for their coaching vacancy.
That was 2014?
2014. So this was after Calipari's
That was, so
the undefeated attempt.
So that was 2015. So that was
right.
May 1st of 14. 14, he played in the national title,
he took
and
an
they
8 seed, right?
lost to UConn, Kevin Ollie. That was the national championship game, was Kentucky versus UConn that year.
But this one reads, plans to reach out.
Yeah.
And we all know that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
The wording on this is much more, like you said, the Tyreek Hill situation where this is already done.
Yeah, feels like it's a total done deal. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. I do want to hear from Woj as to how far down the line this discussion is. And then the timing, Gino Auriemma was on the Dan Patrick Show today and happened to be on the show the day that all of this news is breaking with Dan Hurley. So we'll take a timeout. We'll hear a little bit of that as well. We'll continue rolling on this Thursday edition of the show. More right after this. Talking about what could be a seismic shift in college basketball, because I don't know what UConn does to find their coach. Who do they go and hire? I mean, Kentucky had a hard time luring coaches to Kentucky. UConn, now they've had national championship coaches, 3 of them, Calhoun and Ollie and now Dan Hurley. So it's not like it's a program, a one-coach program. It's not Indiana. It's not a one-coach program. Like it's not Duke. They've had multiple coaches win a national title. So it is. I think it's a blue blood. It's a blue blood that you would be attracting coaches to. But so is Kentucky, and they've got all the money in the world. They were discussing whether or not they were going to pay $30-something million to fire Calipari. Then they didn't have to. And all the money they were going to add up to try to get Calipari out, now they can go and pay for a coach.
Kentucky has talked about like the Lakers job of college.
Yeah, right. Yes, it's like, okay, well, it's Kentucky. You're not turning them down. Unless you're at UConn and you've won back-to-back national titles and you've got guys returning and you've got a top 5 team returning next year and you're a Northeastern guy already. You're not a guy that's traveled around to different places and it's like, okay, I'm a lifer in college and I'm going to the best spots. No, I'm in the Northeast. I'm going to stay in the Northeast. I'm making a lot of money, and I'm winning championships. Don't mess with Happy. Okay. Well, don't mess with Happy is different when it's a 6-year contract for $32 million with UConn. Whereas if the Lakers offered him 6 years, $120, like we'll give you $20 million per year for 6 years. So you can stay at UConn and make $32 million over the next 6 years. Or you can come to the Lakers and make 120. That's not even a question. That's not a, well, I mean, would you really want to go to the NBA? I mean, come on, you're leaving UConn. Yes, of course.
The only thing that would matter is like structure and buyout money and guaranteed.
Right, absolutely. Guaranteed dollars. It's probably going to be more than 6 years.
Yeah, more than 32
It's going to be more than 32. But it's going to be more than 6 years. I think he's going to get a longer term deal because, again, he's there to be the transition from the LeBron Lakers into the what would then be the Anthony Davis Lakers, the LeBron and AD Lakers to the Anthony Davis Lakers,
and
the Dan Hurley.
Wendy's been saying that for a long time too. So I think that's also something that people around the situation have realized, that LeBron is willing to do that, you know.
Yeah, and we played the clip earlier of Windhorst on Get Up that said LeBron has already told the Lakers in this coaching search, do not take into consideration me. You should be making a hire for the next phase of the Lakers. You're making a hire for Anthony Davis and the next group of Lakers. Don't put me in consideration with this because I'm 40 years old. It's and also, like, I saw a lot of people on social media or whatever when it's like, okay, well, LeBron's going to be involved in the hiring process. Well, it's really LeBron hiring the coach. Why is this guy going to be involved in the coach, or why is his decision or input matter at all? Let me say this. I know that there are LeBron haters out there. But if Andy Reid retires, I want Patrick Mahomes to have a say as to who his head coach is going to be. I don't want them hiring a linebackers coach to be the head coach, and then them having not Wink Martindale, but who was the Pittsburgh or the Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator that Lamar and everybody made fun of, or the Steelers offensive coordinator.
Man. Matt Canada, I know that
yeah,
one.
Canada. Yeah, I don't want you hire a defensive line coach to be your head coach and Matt Canada is your offensive coordinator. No, I want Patrick Mahomes to be happy. I want there to be a coach that works well with what Patrick Mahomes brings to the table. So I know there's a hate for LeBron, and it's like, well, why would it matter who the players are with a head coach? I want that to be the case with the Chiefs. When Andy Reid is done coaching, I think he'll be done before Patrick Mahomes' tenure is up. Who the next coach is, I want to work well with Patrick Mahomes. I want it to be an offensive coach that works with Patrick Mahomes, that Mahomes knows the relationship will work. Is that going to be Matt Nagy? Probably, depending on, how long Andy Reid is still coaching. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I think it will be an offensive guy that Mahomes would have a relationship with. His wants, needs will be taken into account. Now, if he is 40 years old and there's a couple of years left for Patrick Mahomes and you don't know if there's a championship on the horizon, well, then maybe you hire a coach that you think is just the overall best coach for the job and will take you in the post-Mahomes, post-Malone run for the Kansas City Chiefs.
They do that with lesser players. Like, think about, and lesser coaches. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played a down. I mean, he played 4. But before he played a down the Jets, they went out and got Nathaniel Hackett a year after he had potentially the worst head coaching tenure of all time.
And you've got
That's Aaron Rodgers.
And you've also got people coming out that were, whether anonymous sources or former coaches or whatever, talking about how disorganized the Jets were last year on offense.
Exactly.
With Nathaniel Hackett as the OC. Like, it wasn't exactly some anomaly there in Denver. What was going on? That, no, this guy's got a great relationship with Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers wants him around. Okay, that's fine, but there's going to be a negative that goes along with that. You may not have the best and most coordinated offense, even though the name is in the word is in the job description, in the name, offensive coordinator. So,
and you really think that they didn't ask LeBron still? Even though say, hey, you're.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And honestly, this guy, who would be against hiring Dan Hurley? Who would say, you know what, I don't want that guy, actually.
Right, but and also, like, if it's, well, they're just going to hire J.J. Redick for LeBron. Well, that'd be different if LeBron's like, I want J.J. Redick to be my coach.
That one I would have kind of been.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. I want J.J. Redick to be my coach, as opposed to, hey, LeBron, what do you think about Dan Hurley?
Right.
You're a pretty freaking smart basketball mind. What do you think of Dan Hurley? Well, I think this and this and this. I think he runs an amazing. I want you to find a guy, a coach, that's going to take us into the next realm after I'm done. That's going to be Anthony Davis's team.
It's also Genie's team. Like, Genie should be thinking about that too. Like, what is my legacy going to be after LeBron? Because before it was not great.
Yeah, and you know what? And Myron brought up a great point. If the Lakers and Genie Buss publicly courting you, everybody knows they are in negotiations and trying to land you and making you a significant offer, and you say no, what NBA team is going to reach out? Like, at that point, the NBA is done. Unless it's the Knicks. Because then it'd be like, well, I said no because it was the West Coast, and I'm a Northeast guy. I'll coach. The Knicks have the brand, and it's in New York. All right, I'll be the Knicks coach. Maybe that's it. But, you turn down the Cavs job, somebody else can call. You turn down Arkansas, Kentucky can still call. Right? Duke can still call. Kansas will still call if you turn down the Arkansas job. Still a good job. Power program. Not a blue blood, but no, thank you. I'm not interested in Arkansas. Oh, well, if he turned down Arkansas, yeah, Kansas is going to call because we're different. Kentucky's going to call. We're different. Duke's going to call. North Carolina, we're different. You turn down the Cavs job, yeah, it's Cavs. Turn down the Lakers with Jeannie Buss, and publicly people know that they are trying to get you lifer at UConn at that point, because he's a lifer college at UConn. You turn down Kentucky, you're essentially staying at UConn forever. If you're going to be coaching college, you're going to be coaching at UConn.
Yeah, that's part of the 4 schools. If you're turning down, you're staying at your current one.
Absolutely. You are making that commitment. Yeah, you're making that commitment that you're going to be here for a very, very long time. Let's hear from, actually, you know what? Let's take a timeout. On the other side, the perfect timing of Dan Patrick having Gino Auriemma on his show today with the news that broke this morning at 5:50 a.m. from Woj in a tweet that Dan Hurley and the Lakers, Gino Auriemma, we'll take a timeout. We'll hear from him weighing in on Dan Hurley, what he should do, the state of college basketball, and what the decision might be in shifting college basketball if he goes to the Lakers. More Zone next. All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB, heading up until 2 o'clock. Coming up at 6 o'clock tonight, I'll be back on the air with a Chiefs Home Run Derby show. The softball game going on out at the Legends, the Trey Smith, Justin Reed charity softball game, offense versus defense. Unfortunate for the special teams because coaches always say all three. You know, when you're playing on the road, you gotta play all three phases: offense, defense, special teams. You can't just say all three phases. You are required contractually as a coach to say all three phases and then say what those phases are in case people were not aware and didn't know what the phases were. All three phases: offense, defense, and special teams. No special teams tonight. Well, is special teams a home run derby? So offense, defense, and home run derbies. That is tonight. 6 o'clock will be on the air until 7 o'clock.
The umpires. There's 11 umpires in the field.
That's right. All 11. And those umpires have to just do their Nick Bolton 1 of 11.
Yep.
I just got to do my 1 of 11. And we'll get there. Gino Auriemma was on the Dan Patrick Show earlier today. And the news breaking this morning at about 6 in the morning about Dan Hurley and the Lakers. Here's this is about a 3.5-minute clip of Gino Auriemma with Dan Patrick as, okay, so thanks for coming on the show, Gino, to talk about a number of different things. So now that you're here, let's talk about this news involving Dan Hurley.
You know, this is really funny because I happened to be at a thing with him last night. And I have no idea what's going on. You know, I have no idea where this is going and what's happening. But I said, just leaned over and I said, hey, I think you can win a lot of championships with the Lakers, you know, more so than a guy who's never coached. And he just looked at me and, you know, nodded, and we had a good laugh. And then this morning I wake up and voila. So I don't know what's going on. And it'd be a bad day for UConn for sure if this happens. And it would be a great day for Dan Hurley, and I'm sure a bittersweet day for Dan Hurley.
Okay. Now, you're being serious that you did bring this up to him last night about the Lakers, John?
Out of nowhere, I just leaned over and I said, you know, I don't know why it came to me. I don't know why, but I said it. And if you ask him, he'll tell you. And I had no idea. And I woke up this morning and somebody sent it to me and I went, you got to be kidding me.
I know that he's talked about not going to another college job, that if he does go down the road when he thinks he's mature enough to coach in the NBA, this happened a lot quicker. But I'm wondering the state of college basketball, certainly men's college basketball, Gino, does that make this decision a little bit more, I guess, palatable or easier when you think about him wanting to go to coach the NBA instead of trying to go for a three-peat?
All those are true. I think the state of college basketball is a mess. If anybody could manage it, though, it would be Danny, because he coaches this program like it's a high school program, like he coached at St. Benedict's. Their player development program is second to none. But I do think that being at UConn and given the state of college basketball and the amount of money now it's going to take to be able to put together a national championship team every single year, I think, and without knowing where it's going, it's a charade. It's this idea of student athlete welfare. Every single thing that comes out of the NCAA's mouth about student athlete welfare, mental, it's bullshit. That has no factor ever anymore. And I never want to hear anybody utter those words associated with college basketball. They are professional athletes, just not called that. So you might as well go coach professional athletes where it's real. Now, if Danny were to leave and somebody said to me, you know, he just took this NBA job, I won't name any particular city, I would say, you know, you're set up for failure. But it's the Lakers. And if I don't know the details of it, but if you're saying, hey, I want a 10-year deal, I want the same deal Brad Stevens got at Boston.
It might be more than that.
Well, then you know what? Hey, Andrea's wife might not like me, but he's crazy if he doesn't take it.
But that's what surprised me, though, Gino, is he's an East Coast guy.
Yeah.
And he'd have to convince her to go out, you know, to Rodeo Drive.
Yeah. Well, that part she might not, you know, she might not argue with. And maybe all the other parts she might have a problem with. But yeah, it's a huge family decision, no question about it.
Interesting stuff from Gino there because, he tells the story that, ironically, last night, he leans over at some charity event that they were at for UConn. He leans over, and he has no idea what's going on behind the scenes with the Lakers. And he leans over and says, you can win a lot of championships there with the Lakers, just randomly. And Hurley gives him an odd look. And then this morning he wakes up to the news. Or that's the way that Gino's telling the story.
Yeah, that's the way. Yeah, I'm sorry. I can go for he was accidentally on the Dan Patrick Show, but I'm not going to go for I accidentally brought up the exact team in the exact situation. And then
it is the only job opening, though.
I know.
And they're looking for coaches.
You don't think around campus that the higher-ups and the people that, would be in the knowledge would include Gino that something's going on?
What if that, what if that is, genuine, that he's, thinking of the Lakers job is open, and he's like...
Then I need him to give me lottery numbers.
Yeah,
That's
for
what
sure.
I need from Gino.
Tell me what I can be.
Right.
Gino? And he's like, I don't think you want me to.
Or just come on our show, and something amazing will happen.
That's right.
In Kansas City or somewhere around here.
And that will have to be some sort of a connection.
Right.
That it would be like, oh, Gino, you're on to talk about this. Great, let's discuss it. But yeah, so he tells the story of he leans over and says, I think you'll win a lot of championships with the Lakers. And then wakes up this morning to the fact that he's in negotiations with the Lakers. But then also, he lays out the issues that are there with college coaches as opposed to the NBA. And he's, saying, hey, we're coaching professionals now. It's no longer amateur sports. It's no longer student athletes. Everything the NCAA is saying about the student athletes is bull bloop. It's not the same anymore. You are coaching professional athletes. And if you're going to be coaching professional athletes, you might as well coach the pros without all of the other tasks and responsibilities and vigors and schedule that goes along with the college game that we're seeing coaches get out of the college game. Jay Wright, Roy Williams, Coach K, they got to Nick Saban. They're at the point to where they're going, you know what, it ain't the same anymore. I don't want to adjust to the game. I'll adjust to life after the game and enjoy retirement with all of the money that I've made in my life. I'll be good doing this. And so Dan Hurley did not seem like he was all that, disenchanted with college basketball and how the game is gone to where, I got to get out. It's the Lakers, as Gino said. And he didn't want to mention a city. It's not just some city, right, that it's like, Jack mentioned earlier, it's not the Charlotte Hornets. I've talked about the Cavs because Tom Izzo was discussing whether or not he was going to take the Cavs to go and coach LeBron. It's not the Cavs.
And I'll toss in the Detroit Pistons as well. Might as well. Make it 3 for 3.
Right. Just throw some different cities out there, right? It's not that. It's the Lakers. And then, him saying, I want the Brad Stevens deal. And Dan Patrick saying, it's going to be better than the Brad Stevens deal. And Gino saying, well, then he'd be dumb not to take it. Sorry to Andrea, his wife. But if it's better than the Brad Stevens deal, he'd be dumb not to take it. Also, the AD there at UConn's going, Gino, what the hell? What do you mean? Gino, whose team are you on here?
There's only room for one amazing blue chip Hall
right.
of Fame basketball coach here, is what Gino was saying, basically.
Gino's like, I don't know why he wouldn't take that job. The Lakers are absolutely amazing. No way you could turn down the Lakers job. Oh, Dan Hurley's gone? Well, I guess it's me again. Hello. King of the castle, king of the castle, king of the
You have
castle.
some more money to throw around here. I think I need a new contract,
I
actually.
think maybe some more NIL to the women's basketball side. You're seeing what South Carolina's doing, and maybe we reinvest in the old UConn Husky dominant run again with some men. Oh, you don't need it for the men's side anymore? Oh, the NIL money that they were getting, they're transferring now? That's available? Sure, why not? If you're offering. But yeah, they are East Coast family, and you got to convince Andrea to live on the West Coast, or as Dan Patrick say, Rodeo Drive. And he's like, well, I don't think that'll be tough to convince. I mean, I think that'll be fine. It's just maybe some other things. But
Beach house in Malibu.
Yeah.
That'll help.
Yeah. What do you think about this beach house in Malibu? I don't know. It's not the Hamptons. So
doesn't get minus 20 degrees here anymore.
Yeah, but summer in the Hamptons, you're fine. You know, you've got time off now. We'll talk some Chiefs next. And I'll be doing a show starting at 6 o'clock right after the program is over. We'll be on the air from 6 to 7 while the Home Run Derby is going on, and we'll see which players will stop by, and we'll get a chance to talk to, et cetera, about, OTAs going on. And they had OTAs today postponed, their final day of this week's OTAs before the mandatory minicamp next week, postponed because of a medical emergency that took place this morning, and that was B.J. Thompson in a special teams meeting suffered a seizure that then he went into cardiac arrest because of the seizure. The medical personnel, trainers, doctors responded quickly. He was taken by ambulance, and he is in stable condition at the hospital right now. The Chiefs did not just simply cancel practice. They have simply moved it to tomorrow. I think that is a pretty decent indication that they feel pretty good about the fact that, he's in stable condition and should be okay. I think if it was something worse, they may just go ahead and say, we'll see you next week for mandatory minicamp. Let's everybody go clear your heads or whatever. But certainly a scary situation that went on at the Chiefs practice facilities today in a meeting with B.J. Thompson. And so that's why there is no Chiefs press conference going on right now. Today, it'll be tomorrow at 1 o'clock. 913-912-4810. Xavier Worthy is signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. So they announced yesterday that the Chiefs have signed Xavier Worthy, the last of their draft picks. And then today they signed Mecole Hardman to a one-year deal. We'll see what the parameters are of the deal for Mecole Hardman. I'm going to go ahead and guess there's not much guaranteed dollars that are going to be associated and connected with that. If they need to move on from Mecole Hardman, come training camp, cut down, it's something I doubt they would have an issue doing because of the contract status. But he was signed today. And so now the Chiefs have Hollywood and Rashee Rice and X and Justin Watson and Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore and now Mecole Hardman in that wide receiver room. And I was waiting for Xavier Worthy to get signed to see what the cap hit would be for this year, like the official cap hit for this year, how they would structure the deal, et cetera. I mean, the money's guaranteed or whatever with the 4-year deal with Xavier. So wanted to see how the cap hit would be structured so then I can look at closer how the Chiefs wide receiver group looks, and just in comparison of what the strategy is by other teams. It's something we have been talking about, and especially, Jalen Waddle and then Justin Jefferson, and we'll see what CeeDee Lamb's going to get and Jamar Chase, et cetera. But Xavier Worthy signed his contract. He's getting $2.5 million against the cap this year. So his cap hit's $2.5 million. Hollywood's at 8.2. Justin Watson is at 2.9, and Rashee Rice is at 1.5. So Rashee Rice's second year in the NFL is $1 million less in a cap hit than Xavier Worthy's first year in the NFL. Difference between being a second round and a first round draft pick. But what was interesting to me and what I wanted to see was adding up those top 4/top 6 salary cap hits to see what they came to for what the Chiefs are paying against the cap this year for their wide receivers. Now, if you pay a bunch of them and there's not one real star, well, then, yeah, I would hope that you're going to be dispersing that money evenly or somewhat evenly. So with the 6 guys, Hollywood, Rice, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore, that's a total of $19.4 million against the cap this year. So what I wanted to see is how many wide receivers are more than $19.4 million against the cap this year alone by themselves. Just as we talk about strategy, right? What's the best course of action moving forward? Should the Chiefs be paying a wide receiver, or is this the right strategy to go about it? There are 11 wide receivers in the NFL by themselves that have a higher cap hit than the Chiefs' top 6 receivers do, total, adding up. Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Debo, Godwin, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Christian Kirk, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, T. Higgins, 12. That's 11. I'm going to change it to 12 because Justin Jefferson's not on this list yet. His cap hit, well, we'll see. I would assume his cap hit's going to be higher than $19.4 million this year. I'm going to assume. 4-year deal with $110 million guaranteed. It's kind of rough to evenly disperse that down, kick the can down the road, especially when the cheapest Jay McCarthy's contract is going to be is in year one. If there's ever a time to front load it, it would be this year.
Both guys are on the same agency, by the way.
Yeah. So I'm going to guess Justin Jefferson's contract is a little bit higher than that. So there are 12 wide receivers by themselves that have a higher cap hit than what the entire group is for the Chiefs. I'm not saying that's a negative for the other teams because Tyreek Hill, worth it. It's just a matter of are you willing to pay that? Cooper Kupp, when healthy, worth it. Debo, worth it. Godwin, not worth $27.5 million. Devontae Adams, yes. DK, yes. Christian Kirk, no. Terry McLaurin, yeah. Amari Cooper, borderline. Keenan Allen, borderline. T. Higgins, yeah. The top 3 receivers for the Chiefs make $12.2 million against the cap this year. There are 19 receivers when you throw in Justin Jefferson. 19 receivers have a higher cap hit by themselves than the Chiefs' top 3. That, to me, is what my question will be moving forward. Is this the strategy for the Chiefs? Is the strategy for the Chiefs the new rookie contract that they don't have a rookie quarterback contract? Is their rookie quarterback contract their wide receiver group? So we talk about, other teams where you're paying Justin Jefferson. Well, you got a rookie contract, rookie quarterback. You're going to be paying, well, it's not Amon-Ra because, they paid Jared Goff. But you've got the luxury of paying some of these players that we see with rookie contracts for quarterbacks in these teams. Okay, you got a little bit of a luxury there. Chiefs don't have that luxury anymore in perpetuity with Patrick Mahomes moving forward. So to pay a Chris Jones, to pay a Travis Kelce, where are you cutting back? Well, they have cut back in wide receiver. And their wide receiver room, that group of receivers, their top 4, is a total of $15 million against the cap. So they've spent on tackle, they've spent on defensive line, they have spent on quarterback, they've spent on tight end. That's where they're using their money. They're allocating those resources are to those spots. You can't spend all that money if you're then paying the wide receiver a lot, defensive tackle a lot, the quarterback a lot, the tight end a lot, and then pay a lot to a wide receiver. So the zig to what other teams' zag would be what the Chiefs are doing now. And I'm hoping that this is going to be something that they can do moving forward. Not only do I want them to do it, but it's a matter of can you do it? Because if you don't have the players that are able to go out and perform at that level with this price, then you can't do it. You got to have playmakers, and Travis Kelce helps you do this. Because if I, throw in Travis Kelce's number, and then you say, okay, is there a player out there with their top wide receiver and top tight end? Okay, then what are they making? Or their top 2 players, what are they making? Oh, a little bit different than when you've got, somebody that's going to be $17 million in Travis Kelce. But it's still an incredible bargain if you're talking about $17 million because he is worth more than Courtland Sutton, who's $17.4 million against the cap this year. It's Courtland Sutton. He's more important than Tyler Lockett. He's more important than DeAndre Hopkins' $18 million. He's more important than Christian Kirk's $24.2 million. He's more important than Chris Godwin's $27.5 million in those cap hits this year. Like, much more important than those guys. So you've got such a bargain with that. And is the wide receiver going to be like the new quarterback contract that's where you are able to put that group together, cheaper deal, and you're spending that money on quarterback? Because the wide receiver group and quarterback for the Vikings is really expensive, the combination. And the combination of Chiefs quarterback and wide receiver is pretty expensive. They're just dispersed different ways. The tackle and the left and right tackle. It's like, how are you spending $20 million on your right tackle? Well, because you're spending 2 on your left tackle. Yeah, but it's left tackle, right tackle. I don't care.
Remember Russell Wilson and Matt Flynn when they drafted Russell Wilson, but they paid Matt Flynn, and everyone just said, well, it's a wash because you're paying Russell Wilson nothing.
Yeah.
So.
And you wanted to find the best, and you weren't banking on Russell Wilson being that guy. You know, you weren't when you drafted Russell Wilson, you didn't plan on him being a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Year one. You didn't plan on winning a Super Bowl with Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman being a combined $1.5 million against the cap. That's typically not the plan, is your best cornerback and your quarterback and 2 of the best in the league that year are a combined $1.5 million against the cap. Different contracts, 10 years ago, but still you're talking about mid-round, late-round picks that turn out to be studs early on, and you're able to save some money at that point. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But it's also a point that you knew it couldn't last. You knew that Richard Sherman was going to get paid. Russell Wilson was going to get paid. You had to take advantage while you could, and they damn near did with 2 Super Bowls. They got one. They were maybe
painful, and I'm not even a Seahawks fan.
Maybe a handoff away from winning 2 with that structure of the contract. The Chiefs have won 2 with Mahomes on his quarterback deal that he can restructure and things like that. But, they didn't pay a lot in the wide receiver room last year, and they're not paying a lot for the wide receiver group this year. Their most expensive receiver last year was $11 million against the cap. Their most expensive receiver this year is $8.2 in Hollywood Brown. Last year was a disaster of a wide receiver group. This year, hopefully it's better if Hollywood Brown performs better than MVS, which I think if he's just simply healthy, he'll perform better than MVS. He'll put up better numbers all year. Just go out there and play. He'll be better. Depending on Rashee Rice's suspension, but they also would get that money back in the cap, so it wouldn't be not a lot of money. They're not paying him $20 million, and you're going to get $10 million back, but it's $1.5 million against the cap, but still. Xavier Worthy, 2.5, Justin Watson, 2.9, if you're looking at your top 4 wide receivers on this team. I hope that's a strategy moving forward, but you better be right when it comes to draft picks. You better be right when it comes to first-rounders, and you might be in the business of just simply saying, we're going to do what we can to go draft a tight end. Like, last year they took FAU. Looking back, would they have liked to have taken Sam Laporta now? After what Travis Kelce went through this year, and wondering
Iowa tight end, you have to take a look at.
Michael Mayer for the Raiders,
yeah.
It's like, hey, you took it. Hopefully FAU is going to be awesome. Hopefully it's going to be a great pick. But Laporta was pretty awesome, and he's going to be a value even when he signs his second contract. It's still going to be a value for what he brings to the offense versus what the wide receivers are making. And that's the value they've been able to live with Travis Kelce, that eventually they're going to have to find out if they have to pay all that money to a wide receiver, top-level money to a wide receiver.
And I don't know if it's ever happened before. It may have, but it's always a good time when you can pay your player a position that is underpaid versus the other one when he's considered
so great,
like a wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the inverted.
So great.
Because he wouldn't be on the team. We know Kelvin Benjamin was a wide receiver that was considered a tight end, and he didn't last very long. So
Kelvin Benjamin ate himself to tight end.
He was one Popeye's biscuit away from a tight end.
Yeah, and he was
Booger McFarland.
Yeah, very much a tight end is what he ended up being. And Jody Fortson, he didn't eat his way to tight end, but it was more of like, you're a wide receiver, but
you could be.
Let's move you to tight end because you as a wide receiver, not much of a value. Tight end, okay, we put you to block, we put you on this spot, you do some of these routes. Well, now we got something here. Now we got a little bit of an advantage.
He's on
here.
a second team.
Yeah, it's fourth season somewhere. Always. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We will. It's a sprint car season going on, and I-70 Speedway tomorrow night and Saturday with the high limit racing event going on at I-70. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back and we'll talk with Brad Sweet from High Limit Racing, getting ready for this event tomorrow night out at I-70 Speedway, tomorrow and Saturday. More Zone coming up next. Take this route through Kansas City your own, I guess?
We sure do like going to that Kansas City area. I've had a lot of success over the years, not only at Lakeside, but also at I-70 Raceway Park. And, I-70's a beautiful facility. They, redid it a few years ago, and it's just, great racetrack. Just really excited to get back there. And obviously a lot of money on the line this weekend with the Race Redeem Foundation race. So someone's going to be walking out of there with $26,000 Saturday night. And, the group of high limit guys have been tough this year, so it should be a good show.
This is the good part of the season, right? The good part of the stretch. A month ago when you started into those $50,000 races and the $26,000 races and on, and a six-figure race coming up as well. This is the fun part of the season when each and every week you guys got a chance to really make some money.
Yeah, as a sprint car racer, we race a lot, 80, 90 times a year we race. But you always look at these June, July, August months. It's when all the biggest races are in the summer. Obviously, we can't race in the winter when the weather gets no good. So you really need to capitalize why the summer months are on, and these big races are going on. So yeah, just with our Napa Auto Parts, number 49 car, we've been good. We won the 50,000 at Lakeside, and we've won 7 races I think this year, and we've had a great season so far, but really the meat of the season, like you're saying, is just getting going. And 2 nights at I-70, we've won there in the past. So yeah, just really looking forward to getting down there, and hopefully the fans will come out and support the event. It's kind of a new event for the track, and there's some new promoters out there. So a lot of efforts going into trying to make the fan experience even more enjoyable than it's been in the past. So kind of excited to see what everybody's what they got up their sleeves.
You said you're having a good season without actually having to say you're having a good season, because before that you said, I think we've won 7 races. You're having a good year if you can't quite remember how many races you've won so far.
Yeah, I've had some good years in the past. It's no joke, but we never take it for granted in sprint car racing. It can you can just when as easy as you're hot and winning, it can get cold and not winning. So it's been a good season up to this point. We don't want to jinx it or anything, but we just want to stay focused and try to give ourselves the best chance we can to win every night. But like I said, the group of high limit racing guys is tough. Rico Abreu and Tyler Courtney and Brent Marks, and then this guy named Kyle Larson pops in every now and then and takes our money. So we, it's never easy to get these wins, but when you're doing good, you try to stay focused, and it's a lot of money on the line as a sprint car racer this year. Sprint car racing is probably in the best position it's ever been, and we're seeing big crowds, and we're racing for bigger purses than we've ever raced for. So yeah, it's an exciting time for a sprint car driver.
We had Rico on a month ago when getting ready for Lakeside, and I asked him, as he's coming down the final couple of laps, and he sees the number 49 car there, knowing, the name on High Limit Racing, like what happens there. And now he said, I'm going to race him as hard as I can, and he knows that. But I'm wondering, you've got the 7 wins, and it's not anything to take away from your wins, but is there something in the contract of joining High Limit that final lap, if it's the number 49 versus the other car, maybe throttle back a little bit?
No way, Jose. No, we take the competition very seriously. Kyle and I, helped start High Limit Racing along with Flow Racing as kind of a way to give back to the sport. We felt like we had a lot to give back. Kyle's, obviously got a huge following, and I've got a lot of experience out on the road being a 5-time World of Outlaw champion. And, we felt like we could, help start a new series that was maybe a little more transparent with the race teams and, help build up the purses and do some midweek races and build some of these bigger events. And, but when it comes to the competition, when I'm at the racetrack, we have a great staff, a great group of guys that run High Limit Racing. And if anything, they're harder on me. And if anything, the racers there's a target, I'd say, on my back. Just, obviously coming off of 5 straight World of Outlaw championships, we've kind of been the team to beat, for a good portion of, the last quite a few years. So these guys, they want to prove that they're the best. And, we've been able to kind of, stay on top, but there's a lot of good guys really getting close now, and yeah, it's been fun racing, and this group's very hungry, and it what it creates is great racing and a great show for the fans for sure.
Visiting with Brad Sweet, the number 49 car, HighLimitRacing.com is where you can go and get tickets and more information for this race coming up, the Race Routine Foundation event at I-70 Motorsports Park. And, you mentioned that, wanting to give back and give something back to racing, and you and Kyle, coming together with others to start High Limit Racing. As you look back through this endeavor over the last, 16, 18 months, I guess, since it's been rolling, or even longer than that, when you're, from an idea to actually something tangible, has it been what you thought it would be? Is it more challenging than what maybe you even imagined, more rewarding than what you imagined? How's it been from going from a race driver to now being a part of, this entire circuit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's been, it's something that I never thought I would do. I can tell you that. I was on the World of Outlaw Tour for 10 years, and was always kind of thinking what I would do after racing. And I mean, this opportunity presented itself with Kyle, and Flow Racing is, has tons of subscribers, and they were streaming a lot of races. So it was a good opportunity for me to. I've always had big ideas and, aspirations to help take sprint car racing to the next level. I really feel like it's a great product, and, if it's showed right, the fans really enjoy it. There's just a lot of nights that it doesn't get showed right to the fans, and, it feels like if someone got the right chance or the right opportunity, that they could do a lot with sprint car racing. So it's certainly, I knew it'd be a challenge, but there's probably challenges that I didn't expect, or there's some stuff that's gone better than I expected. So I'd say overall, anytime you're starting something new or something from scratch, you're always, scratching and clawing to try to, make it better or get through, the adversity. And that's anything in life, I think. I mean, it's no different than when I wanted to become a World of Outlaw champion. I felt like I had to, work really hard to beat Donnie Schatz and scratch and claw, and this is kind of no different. It's I feel like the start of business and hire employees and take a bunch of race teams up and down the road and sell tickets. It's there's definitely a lot of challenges, but like you said, it can be very rewarding if we're pulling off what we're pulling off, and the fans are enjoying the shows and the teams are enjoying the series, and I just see there's a lot of growth in sprint car racing, and it's that's what's rewarding is that Kyle and I are able to kind of actually go out on the limb, and so far it's paying off for us.
Visiting with Brad Sweet, the Race Routine Foundation, the event coming up at I-70 Motorsports Park Friday and Saturday night. HighLimitRacing.com to go check out and get your tickets and more information, with the pits opening up at 2, gates opening up at 4, hot lap starting at 6:30. Being in the position that you are now as opposed to just a driver, I mean, doing both, what's that responsibility like when something like Tuesday night happens, when you have to be a major part of making a decision to cancel an event, as opposed to a driver that's sitting back and waiting for the information, waiting for the actual decision, and you're not the one having to go around and tell everybody, look, I know you drove here, I know you've spent money to be here, you got your cars out there, but, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I think the decision-making is still up to kind of Mike Hess, our series director, and JP, but they, the weather was just a deciding factor, and I think the difference now is that I feel a little bit more, I guess, responsible for the teams and our staff, and just feel bad when everybody has to go through stuff like that. It's the weather just wasn't definitive. It's always nice if it's either going to rain out, it just rains, and so it saves the fans money and it saves the teams money, or it just misses us. And it was kind of like lingering, light rain, and so it was just a hard decision to make because we had all the fans there and wanted to provide a show. We had all the teams there, and we wanted them to go out there and race for the purse, and it just kind of wouldn't give us an answer, and then it finally did, but it was after everybody got there and got wet and paid to get in, and it just makes it a challenge. I hate it for the fans. I hate it for our teams, and I think it's just because I care so much about, high limit racing as a whole. I don't want fans to have a bad experience. I don't want the race teams to think we don't care about them. So, all that stuff it's more, I feel more attached to it and more responsible and just, genuinely feel bad when it happens. And the racers are used to it, and, they're tough, but you hate to do it to the crew guys and, the fans. I feel bad anytime you don't put on a show that you're trying to put on for them. So, yeah, just tough, but it's all part of the process. Like you said, just the ups and downs and the challenges of starting and owning a series.
So the final lap happens in a race. Brad Sweet's our guest. You're in the final lap, and it's you and Kyle, toe-to-toe, wide open, just going back and forth. Your sister is rooting for who?
I don't know. You'd have to ask her.
I mean, there's blood, right? I mean, there's blood that's there. You have more history.
What's the old saying? Blood is always thicker than water.
Yes.
But, yeah, I don't know. I think my sister cheers for me for a good bit, but also obviously her husband and the father of her 3 kids. I wouldn't blame her for cheering for him either. So it's all, when Kyle and I are racing, I think we both just race each other like we'd race anybody else and race hard. And, he's beat me plenty and I beat him plenty. And, we don't get too cocky or too, we don't talk too much smack or anything like that. We drive each other hard. And I think honestly, I have a lot of respect for what he does and what he does for the sport. And, I think he respects me as a racer as well. So, we race each other hard though. We just like Lakeside. I was able to kind of beat him out, and it always feels good when you beat him because, he's in that conversation of, one of the best that we've ever seen. So he elevates every race, and, it makes you feel good as a race car driver that you can, race against him and maybe even beat him sometimes.
Brad Sweet, the I-70 Motorsports Park, the Race Routine Foundation event coming up this weekend, Friday and Saturday night with High Limit Racing. HighLimitRacing.com is where you can go and check out the information and get tickets for this fantastic event coming up this weekend. Brad, really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. Congrats on the success you've had personally in your career and now with High Limit Racing and certainly this season as well. And best of luck moving forward. And we'll see if you can make the little Kansas City trip, make it 2 for 2 so far.
That's right. Thanks for having me on. And, hopefully we see all the fans out there. I appreciate it.
All right, there's Brad Sweet. HighLimitRacing.com is where you can go to. I-70, the event's coming up tomorrow and Saturday as well, and he is having a fantastic season. And like I said there at the beginning, when his answer, when he said, I think I've won 7 races this year, you're having a good year when you don't remember how many races you've won. If you've won 1, you remember you won 1 race. If you won 2, you remember you won 2 races. But I think I'd have to go back and look. I think it's 7 that we've won so far this year. Yeah, sure. I'll take your word for it, man. I know I may have the standings right in front of me and the results right in front of me, but if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. I mean, it's kind of a baller move, right? It's kind of a little bragging, a little humble brag without a humble brag. I think we've won 7. The Chiefs, I think they've been to 4 Super Bowls in the 5 years. I think it's 4. Is it 4 Super? I got to think about this. Was it that's Miami, COVID? And they had the one. And there was that one in. Not in L.A. They didn't go to that one. But
we have an expert in this kind of stuff
Arizona.
here, but he's not present. So
yes. We will. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling, and wrap up the show heading up until 2 o'clock right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. All right, we'll continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Dylan Michaels heading up until 2 o'clock. Coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, the Home Run Derby show we will have right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. I'll be hosting, talking to different Chiefs players that'll be out there at Legends Field with the charity game going on. Trey Smith, Justin Reed, offense versus defense. And we'll be out there, the Home Run Derby going on at 6 o'clock. If you're heading out to the game, a lot of fun. St. John will be emceeing the Home Run Derby. And that'll be a lot of fun to take place with. And then we'll be talking to different Chiefs players as they stop by throughout the show from 6 to 7 while the Home Run Derby is going on. And certainly guys will be out there, whether they're participating in the Home Run Derby or not, getting ready, warming up for the actual softball game that will take place at 7 o'clock. A lot of fun. I did not attend last year, but I heard it was a blast. And so been looking forward to this one. Didn't know if they were going to continue the softball game because last year it was the MVS softball game with his charity, but with it being, when MVS was not re-signed, it's like, okay, are they going to continue to do this? And Trey Smith and Justin Reed stepped up, and the money going to, help out those charitable causes, and a cool idea of the, offense versus defense and the special teams. So that'll be going on tonight out at Legends Field, and we'll have that show for you at 6 o'clock right after the program with Seren Petro. 913-912-4810 is the Chiefs text line. News that's happened today so far. Late afternoon yesterday, Chiefs signed Xavier Worthy, the final draft pick to be signed. So they have all of their draft picks under contract now, and he was the final one. A couple of pieces of news this morning. One of those was that the Chiefs have signed Mecole Hardman, re-signed him to a one-year deal. Parameters of the deal, don't know yet. I would highly doubt there is going to be much of a guaranteed portion of that contract. It'll be depth. It'll be somebody that could make the squad. He is obviously familiar with the offense, but if he doesn't perform in training camp and, it's a numbers game, then probably easy enough to move on with that contract. But they brought him back. He's on a one-year deal. That was the news from the Chiefs side. The what was scary news is that the Chiefs had to postpone their practice today to tomorrow. They were supposed to be having press conferences right now, but those press conferences are now moved to tomorrow because they had a medical emergency, a medical event out at the practice facility. B.J. Thompson, in a special teams meeting, suffered a seizure that turned into cardiac arrest. The medical personnel, doctors, training staff got there quickly, helped. Ambulance transported him to the hospital. He is in stable condition. So looks like it is going to be good news from a really scary moment that was taking place today. We knew it was something of a serious nature when the Chiefs sent out their press release. It was just simply practice has been postponed from today to tomorrow because of a medical event at the facility. That was it. And so then you had to have reporters do a little more digging. Nate Taylor, Tom Pelissero. We get the information that, okay, we knew it was a defensive lineman that suffered some sort of an event. Then we found out that a defensive lineman had suffered a seizure, and then that resulted in cardiac arrest. Then eventually we find out that it was B.J. Thompson. And so certainly everybody's thinking about B.J. Thompson and the fact that the Chiefs are just postponing practice and not just canceling it. And saying we'll see you next week for mandatory minicamp. Probably good news on the front of long-term projection for B.J. Thompson, but still has to be incredibly scary when you see a teammate when that's happening like that. The news that's across the country that has been taken over TV and radio and all the conversation that's out there, the gas bags, the talking heads, opinion makers. The news of Dan Hurley and the Los Angeles Lakers. Let's play clip number 1 here. This is Woj this morning, and he's talking about what's the latest, where this discussion is, and this contract, the courting from the Lakers to hire Dan Hurley.
Massive development in the NBA, potentially college basketball. The Los Angeles Lakers are preparing a massive long-term offer for Connecticut Huskies coach Dan Hurley to become the next Lakers coach. He is the target of their search. He's been the target of the Lakers search since the beginning. The sides have had preliminary contact, I'm told, and those conversations are expected to escalate in the coming days. Dan Hurley has shown a willingness to listen to the Lakers, Rob Pelinka, their vice president and GM, and Jeannie Buss, their owner, to hear them out on what a Hurley-Lakers partnership would look like. And this, for Dan Hurley, the NBA has been an ambition of his. He has talked about it. And the chance to hear out the Lakers, which is certainly the mountaintop of coaching at any level, is something he's going to do now in the coming days. The Lakers have been relentless, I'm told, in their pursuit of Hurley. And now they're going to get a chance, to extensively lay out to him the vision they see for bringing Dan Hurley's program to the NBA. And that's what the Lakers are after here, I'm told, is putting in place a legacy coach with a long-term deal. I'm told a massive commitment financially, and allow Dan Hurley to come to LA and put in place a system, put in place a real long-term vision with Pelinka to run that organization. Certainly major ramifications for the UConn program, back-to-back national championships. Dan Hurley has become the most sought-after coach at any level of basketball. He was not willing to listen to any college jobs, after winning that second championship, but he is willing to listen to the Lakers. They have communicated, and those talks now are going to pick up over the next few days.
It's interesting because, we've heard so much of J.J. Redick the last couple of days that it's going to be J.J. Redick. They're talking to J.J. Redick. And then Woj says that Dan Hurley has been the target from the beginning for the Lakers. It's the person they've wanted from the beginning. Now, while they were targeting Dan Hurley, were they also looking at other candidates that may come in and take the job if Dan Hurley says thanks but no thanks, and therefore J.J. Redick was on the list? And then it's like, oh, wait, they're talking to J.J. Redick. Oh, well, it's J.J. Redick. LeBron's handpicking J.J. Redick. They're bringing in his friend to be the head coach. Okay, it's going to be J.J. Redick.
I think that may have been a little insider beef, a little Shams shot across the bow at the end there, maybe.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I think that they are looking at both of these guys, so I think that's what that was.
But, yeah, J.J. Redick can be part of the conversation while Dan Hurley is the main target from the beginning. Both those things can be true. Because if Dan Hurley said no, then who are you going to get? You don't want to be sitting there holding the bag and Dan Hurley says no, and it's like, well, we spent 2 weeks only thinking about Dan Hurley. Now who do we hire? Well, now we got to go through the process again. You got to have feelers out for different people. But what he said there, and I think that's one of the most impactful parts of this whole discussion, is his willingness to listen and hear them out, and the ambition that he has and that he's talked about openly of wanting to coach in the NBA. I don't think you get to this point in the news coming out if there wasn't a level of very serious discussions that are probably past a number of different hurdles that Jeannie Buss, Rob Pelinka would be comfortable enough letting Woj know what's going on. Because this did not come from the college side. This is not a breaking news, from Andy Katz or Myron Metcalf or Gary Parrish, right, on the college side. If Gary Parrish is breaking news that Dan Hurley's in talks with the Lakers, I'm going to guess that's coming from the college side and Dan Hurley. This is coming from the NBA side and Woj, so it's coming from Jeannie Buss or Rob Pelinka, which means that they're pretty confident they've got their guy. They're not releasing that info.
Yep.
And
I
so
agree. Basically, my only question to you is, are you betting that the press conference is tomorrow, Friday, or Saturday before Game 2 of the Finals?
I don't think they would do it on a Saturday, though.
Right. That's kind of
what
I'm
Game 2 on
thinking.
Saturday or Sunday?
It's Sunday. That's why I'm saying.
So before, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not literally that day, but before that game tips off, but the day before.
Because I almost said Monday because I think that's way too long. Like, you want to kind of do this and hit while the iron's hot. Obviously, it's still going to be the biggest story of the
if they
offseason.
decide something today, then what's the point of waiting a couple of days? Just do it tomorrow. I mean, but also you're not really do you care about maximizing the news cycle at this point?
Right,
It's going to be
It's Lakers. It's LeBron.
Because if the news comes out tonight that he's the Lakers coach, well, then it's going to be discussed during Game 1 of the NBA Finals. If you have your press conference tomorrow, typically a Friday news dump of news you don't want out there, but it's a press conference. And then Sunday will be Game 2 of the NBA Finals. There'll be more conversation around it and around Dan Hurley to the Lakers while those games are going on. So you would have a Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and then on into Monday, because it may be your first time on Monday, depending on what time the press conference was, to maybe talk about things that you had heard or a different conversation or things that he said, more information coming out. And by Monday, we might have different players on UConn transferring.
Yeah, sorry to get off track there. That was more of a fun way to say this is over. Like, this is happening.
No, and we asked Myron Metcalf, and I asked him, hey, is Dan Hurley the Lakers coach next year? And he goes, I think Dan Hurley's the Lakers coach tonight. I'm like, well,
that was great.
I didn't specifically mean like when he will, because I don't think they would wait till next year to introduce him, but it was great.
Also, they have an extra 3 hours on time difference, too, to get things done.
Point. That's a really good
point.
Yeah,
it might happen late tonight.
It's not even noon out there.
Right.
I mean,
that's wild.
They're not even eating lunch yet. I mean, they got plenty of time. Of course, it's almost 3 o'clock where Dan Hurley is.
Right.
So he's like, look, man, into business today. Okay, we got EOB going on. I need to figure this out.
Or I need a flight there.
That's right.
Today.
This report coming from John Fanta. Dan Hurley met with his players at UConn this morning, informed them he's been in talks with the Lakers. Hurley didn't want to hide the fact that this is real. Huskies have a noon practice, so that would have been 9 o'clock our time?
Yeah.
9 o'clock our time? 9 o'clock our time?
9 o'clock Pacific. If it was a noon practice?
Yeah, that's what 9 o'clock Pacific with the Lakers, yes. So they have they had a noon practice, and Hurley told his players, business as usual for now.
That'll go over like a lead balloon.
I mean, right? I mean, they're having their workouts and stuff, and, what's that conversation going on with the players in Caravan? And I get it that Dan Hurley has to go about the process as if it was a regular day. Hey, we're having our workouts today. Just so happens to be I'm about to be the next Lakers coach. But if something were to happen, if our, lawyer finds a poison pill in there, then, yeah, we're still going through practice because we're getting ready for next year.
Yeah. And, like, if it came out or if he knew he was going to be interviewing and trying to get this job a week ago when Caravan decided to not go to the NBA draft, I think that's a little easier to sit with. But if it comes out that he's been kind of in works of this for months and then Caravan decided to come back for a three-peat, that's where you'll kind of get a divide.
Jim Calhoun, quote, this was talking with John Fanta, quote, I think he needs to look at the Lakers opportunity like anybody else would. You've got to look at it. It's Danny and his wife's decision. It's a family decision. Going 3,000 miles from where you're from is hard enough. I looked at a couple of NBA jobs. I know who I am. I'm a college coach. I'm not a pro coach. He's happy at UConn. He loves UConn. And we've become great friends, and I'm very proud of it and happy for him. It comes down to what he wants. But this is the Lakers we're talking about. Yes, you look at this opportunity, of course. I mean, sounds about right. Like you're not wanting to lead one way or another. Look, I looked at NBA jobs, so I understand that you would look at when the NBA comes calling, you would think about it. But when I looked at myself in the mirror, I'm a college coach. Didn't want to be a pro coach. Danny Hurley has not been quiet about his ambitions to be an NBA coach. And,
when you have an offense that's never been tried and people talk about it the way they talk about, why would you not?
Yeah. He'll always have the fallback of being a college coach that will be able to work wherever he wants of any job. There will be programs that would tell Danny Hurley, we'll fire our coach if you'll take the job. Like, we don't have an opening, but we have an opening. We have a soft opening. It's just for family and friends.
And Dan Hurley.
Yeah, only you and your family and friends can know that there's a soft opening at this particular job, at this restaurant. Man, it's going to be fascinating because as soon as Dan Hurley takes the job, there's a 30-day window that would open up for the players on the UConn roster to enter the transfer portal. And there are some dynamic players on that team, including Liam McNeely, top 10 recruit in the country, that chose UConn over Kansas.